Texting while driving is a very serious issue. Flat out, texting while driving is illegal, and for good reason. If caught texting, you can incur a $100 fine, as well as further penalties.
But more importantly, texting can endanger lives. When you are texting, you are 23.2 times more likely to get into an accident. When compared to something like drunk driving, it is much more dangerous. When you are texting, your eyes are off the road 400% longer than normal driving.
But there's more to it. Electronic devices in general are dangerous on the road. Talking on a phone causes nearly 25% of accidents. 21% of fatal car crashes involving teenagers between the ages of 16 and 19 were the result of cell phone usage. In 2008, almost 6,000 people were killed and 500,000 were injured as a result of electronic usage. A car driver dialing a cell phone is 2.8 times more likely to get into a crash than a non-distracted driver.
No text is worth dying over. Please keep our roads and yourself safe by not texting and driving.
And now, enjoy the show.
You hear the phone ring and realize there's nowhere left to run. You feel the vibrate and wonder if you'll ever see that text. You close your eyes and hope that it's not from your parents. But all the while, you see that flashing LED. SMS is unreal, 'cause this is texting night. No one's gonna save you from the text about to strike. No, it's texting on your phone. Fight the urgent text and drive tonight.
like to call this meeting to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
President Hartstein,
Here.
Trustee Brayman,
Here.
Trustee Glover, Trustee Trilling.
What about Berman?
I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Trustee Berman. Trustee Trilling.
Here.
Here.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call on our village treasurer, Mr. Tenorelli, relating to warrant 1156.
Corporate fund, $500,290.32. Parking lot fund, $4,642.29. Capital projects facilities, $231,333.98. Health insurance, $3,331.08. Police pension fund, $775. Fire pension fund, $550. Water fund, $194,981.73. Buffalo Grove Golf Fund, $13,267.23. Arboretum Golf Fund, $13,902.61. Refuse Service Fund, $80,145.93. Payroll period ending 11/8/10, $890,630.73. Total warrant number 1156, $1,933,850.90.
Thank you. Are there any questions relating to the warrant? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve warrant 1156.
So made.
Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Brayman.
Aye.
Berman.
Aye.
Trilling.
Aye.
Sussman.
Aye.
Thank you. Under Village President's report, I just have a few items. First of all, I would like to commend our library, Indian Trails Library District, and our Park District for two tremendous programs which were put on last week relating to honoring our veterans. At the library commemoration, there was a tremendous presentation by our own George Krug, who was a veteran of the Korean War, and he shared some very interesting stories, and it was really a memorable occasion. Similarly, there was a tremendous program, as there is each and every year at the Buffalo Grove High School, that's sponsored by our Park District, and a memorable display of flag display of all of our armed forces and so forth. But one of the things that I wanted to just bring to mind, and I'm going to give special recognition at our next meeting, but there were a group of Buffalo Grove High School students who I just like to single out, and we'll do it in greater detail at our next meeting. But these students, on the eve of Veterans Day, had a dance-a-thon to raise money to support our veterans. And these Buffalo Grove high school students raised over $6,000, which they presented to a local organization that works for supporting our veterans at that particular event. And I think it's very, very special, and I certainly commend our students for doing that. I'd also like to commend our symphonic band for a tremendous concert last weekend. It was great as always. I know you probably all realize there'll probably be many holiday concerts. Check the webpage for many of those concerts when they'll be coming up. And they did a super job as well. They'll be celebrating, believe it or not, their 10th anniversary this spring. And hope everybody will mark their calendars for celebrating that momentous anniversary for our own symphonic band. Coming up later this month is another tremendous event which brings the community together. And I'm speaking of our interfaith Thanksgiving service, which will be held on the evening of Sunday, the 21st at Temple High at 7 p.m. Always a tremendous event for our entire community, and I want everybody to come out to pay thanks for all we can be thankful for in our community and our nation and elsewhere. I know these are difficult times, but nonetheless, we have all much to be thankful for, and where we have a diverse community, and this is a great coming together, and I urge everybody to participate. Also mark your calendars for our blood drive, which is coming up on December 4th. And one last thing in terms of an announcement, I would like to, at the last week when we had the Land O'Lakes IEPA hearing, I'd just like to spend special thanks to one of our citizens, Mike Feldman, who volunteered at no cost to the community and to the village to videotape that hearing, so anybody who wanted to see what took place at that hearing would have an opportunity to do it. He has made those particular tapes available to the village, and we have tapes available. Anybody who would like a tape can contact the village, and you'll have an opportunity to get a tape of that particular. I know there are probably other means for having an opportunity to view, and I know the media did a tremendous job of covering that particular hearing, but that particular hearing is available on videotape here at the Village Hall. Anybody who requests it can contact the village manager's office, and we have a DVD available. One last thing in terms of a call to action for the village. This particular week, our legislators are going back into session during the veto session. And one of the things which I know you've heard me talk about many times and other people have talked about is the significance of pensions, public safety pensions in particular, on our budget. It's one of those things over which we have no discretion since it is the legislature that makes that determination. One of the things which hopefully will be on the agenda during the veto session will be possible reform of our public safety pensions, which could mean real money to not only to Buffalo Grove, but to each and every community in the state. I've already had the opportunity the last couple of days to speak to our legislators, Representative Mathias, Representative Senti, Senator Link, and Senator Matt Murphy. And I would urge each and every one of you, this is really, really important. I would urge you to take a couple moments, send an email, make a call, and urge them to act on this public safety pension reform during this veto session. We're talking about our budget tonight, and you'll have even a better idea of why this is so significant. But I urge every one of you at home to do that, and hopefully we'll see some relief during this particular veto session. At this time, I would ask if there are any reports from trustees. Trustee Sussman?
Following up what President Hartstein said, I just want to say that the IEPA hearing is also on YouTube, so that if you want to see it, you can see it there as well.
Thank you. Trustee Berman?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick comment. On November 5th, I had the pleasure to attend the Jefferson Awards for Public Service downtown. It's a special service group that awards people in the community, in the region, for their efforts, extraordinary efforts in the realm of public service and philanthropy. Stevenson High School was honored that evening as the 2010 Chicago Regional Students in Action Champions and represented the region at the national competition in recognition of their philanthropy and public service. And it didn't get a lot of notice or a lot of play, but it was a very special recognition and a very well-deserved honor for one of our local high schools. And I wanted to mention that I had the opportunity to be there, and it really is a nice award, and congratulations to Stevenson.
Thank you. Any further reports from trustees? Seeing none, we'll move on to our village manager report.
Thank you, President Hartstein. I just have one item. I had emailed the village board on Friday afternoon regarding ongoing repairs to the Cambridge-on-the-Lake lift station relative to trying to get that lift station back in service after the failure that we experienced a few weeks ago. We are at a point where we essentially have to proceed with some work relative to demolishing some of the interior fixtures in the wet well, as well as restoring part of the dry well, and also some security type devices that need to be installed. We would like to go ahead and proceed with this under an emergency repair in lieu of delaying that until the next board meeting. The faster we can get some of these projects going, the faster we can get the temporary pump system out of service there, which we are beginning to receive some complaints from neighbors. Obviously, it's quieter than it was, but we can understand why they may be sensitive to pumps that are in place there now. So I just wanted to consult with the board to make sure you were comfortable with us to proceed with that. I did hear from Trustee Sussman, who indicated that she was, but I had not heard from the other board members.
Would you like any formal action at this time?
It wouldn't require any formal action, but just if we have concurrence from the board to go forward with this.
Is there any objection for anyone?
Okay, thank you. We will, and then that will be presented at the December 6th meeting, correct, Greg?
Thank you.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. We move now to questions from the audience. I invite anyone to come forward at this time with questions or comments on non-agenda items. Ms. Stone.
Hi, I'm Lisa Stone. I'm only here because this is so loud tonight. I'm only here because our government board, with the exception of Trustee Sussman and myself at the time, this government voted against taping and airing the IEPA public hearing for the citizens of Buffalo Grove to be seen on Channel 6, our government channel. We discussed, can I just ask, can you hear me, because I'm getting this big echo?
It's loud, but maybe, can someone turn that down possibly, the echo? Oh, okay, it's echoing a little bit. Thank you.
Hello?
Thank you. It's coming through.
I know it is. I just want to make sure that it's not, that it's not unaudible. Okay, let me say again. I'm going to stand back so it can be heard. I'm Lisa Stone, and I'm only here because this government, with the exception of Trustee Sussman and myself, they voted against taping and airing the IEPA public hearing on the post-closure care of the landfill that was held November 9th. This public hearing, I'm going slow for a reason because the echo's coming back. I'm hearing the echo, so I want to make sure the citizens do hear this. Anyhow, the post-closure care public hearing on the landfill was historic. It was the first time that that's ever taken place in Illinois. Public hearing, I requested the public hearing and it was granted. I requested it to Doug Scott, the head of the IEPA. And like I said, it was historic. It was very important because it's regarding public safety, regarding this landfill that we've been talking about for most of the year. So I'd like to read for the public, on November 3rd, the day after the election of November 2nd, the Better Government Association wrote to the Buffalo Grove trustees, and this is what they wrote. The Better Government Association, or Dear Buffalo Grove trustees, the Better Government Association urges you to reconsider your decision not to record or make public the upcoming IEPA hearing in Buffalo Grove. The video capabilities featured on your webpage indicate a commitment to transparency and openness in public forums. We see no reason you would not extend that same level of transparency to this IEPA hearing. Government has a vested interest in ensuring taxpayers have access to vital information of public interest and concern. We can think of few greater issues of concern than the upcoming hearing, a forum that will address monitoring whether phenol, a known toxin, is polluting the groundwater your citizens rely on. We have groundwater as a backup emergency source. I've discussed this with BGA board members and our executive director, Andy Shaw, and this email represents our unanimous feeling about this issue. Please feel free to contact me via email or phone to discuss this matter at any time. Sincerely, Emily Miller, Policy and Government Affairs Coordinator, Better Government Association, which, as most of you probably know, is the 87 or 88-year watchdog group that fights corruption in government. So that letter was received by the board. It didn't change the board's opinion, and they chose not to tape televise this meeting for the public citizens. You will not be seeing this on Channel 6. You will not be seeing it on the village website. A citizen was generous enough to take his time, Mike Feldman, I understand, and he taped it and he made DVDs. Our government has offered 3 DVDs for the 43,000 citizens to take out on loan. We can all share those. What I did was I got one of the DVDs and I uploaded it to YouTube. Thank you, Bev, for mentioning. I uploaded it to YouTube. As you know, on YouTube, you can only upload 15-minute increments. So there's 5 segments on YouTube. And it's under the name, there's various ways you can get to it. It's under Trustee Lisa Stone. Mind you, Trustee Lisa Stone, not Buffalo Grove Trustee Lisa Stone, just Trustee Lisa Stone. And you could also search it by Land and Lakes Landfill. I put Elliot Hartstein's name on there as a tag word. I figured as our president that's a good idea. Various ways you could find it, but Trustee Lisa Stone, one word, is going to be probably your simplest way to get there. It's 1 through 5, and the expert testimony, the expert panel that I coordinated is segments 3 through 5. The first 2 segments are important as well, but just if you want to hear the testimony of the experts, which include an attorney, an environmental attorney from the Chicago Environmental Legal Clinic, who's under the supervision of Professor Keith Harley, and they came out pro bono. They're selective in when they come out, so just so the public understands, this is an issue that really merits and warrants concern, or environmental groups certainly don't take their time to research and investigate and take a position, as they had. Anyone that goes to the YouTube will hear exactly what they have to say, so I won't go through that and tell you what their concerns and findings are. There's other experts as well, so I'll let you go to that yourself. But a couple other things that I'd like to mention, now that the echo's gone, is that equally, many citizens, given the fact that I obviously was concerned about this issue for many, many months, many citizens have written to me because they saw that I had a sensitivity to it and that I was very concerned about further testing. So for those citizens, just as there's a YouTube Trustee Lisa Stone that you can find the public hearing, you can also email me at trusteelisastone@aol.com. I understand that there's a difference in opinion. We've heard some of the board members say it's much ado of nothing, so I imagine if you email them, you probably will get that same response. I will tell you what I know, and I will even share documents with you that I have. I've got FOIA documents from the EPA. I've got all the documentation that I wish that our government would share with you, and I wish that they would have shared the public hearing as well. I feel, just as the Better Government Association felt very strongly that you have the right to hear, I still have to say, in this day and age and in this country, I find it hard to believe that even under home rule government that a board could actually get away with not airing to their public such a critical meeting. While you used the reason that you were concerned that possibly the Planning Commission or the Zoning Board might want to use Channel 6, I think this is the first time in 52 years that there's been a landfill issue in Buffalo Grove, and one no less that's historic, that the IEPA held a public hearing on the closure plan. But for some reason, that didn't move this government board, with the exception of Trustee Sussman and myself, to feel that the citizens had a right to hear it, good, bad, or otherwise. I feel like you've kept that information from the people, and I don't think it would be, I guess it's redundant, but let me say again, I think that is incredibly wrong that you've done so. So I've done everything I can. So in closing, let me just make sure that I have hit all of my points. And if there is a problem with the audio, as was earlier in the night, I don't want the citizens to be concerned if they didn't hear it if that happens, I'll come back to the next meeting and I'll repeat it all again, if that's necessary. I hope not, because I would hope not to, but I just want to make sure that the citizens are well informed. And I think that's it. YouTube, Trustee Lisa Stone, one word, and to email TrusteeLisaStone@AOL.com, one word. And I'll keep you informed. And do watch the public hearing, because I think you'll be quite interested to hear what they had to say, including, one last thing, on the IEPA panel was sitting Kimberly Raw and Stephen Nightingale. And there's something called the Raw Memorandum, which when you learn and you watch the public hearing, you'll realize that in the Raw Memorandum, a 10-page document that spoke about the findings and her concern, and equally Stephen Nightingale, who sat on the dais, these people, you will hear from the experts testimony about their documentation. So it's pretty solid. As far as what my concern always was, which was to complete the testing, let's find out. And the government, just so you know, the Buffalo Grove government did come out with a position that night, because they would like the development to hurry up and start building, or whatever the anxiousness was, after all necessary tests are completed. I certainly just wanted their tests completed, and I hope that that is what ultimately happens, because we all want a lot of business and, you know, a great community with great revenue, but we need to secure safety first. So anyone that wants to look into it, just go to the YouTube and you'll see. And if this board should happen to have any meeting, Bev, if you can convince them to put that tape on Channel 6, I think it would be a very wise move. In all honesty, the more people see it on YouTube, they're going to wonder why you didn't put it on Channel 6. The fact that you're worried about planning commissions and zoning boards, and you even compared it to that you're worried that the KKK may ask to be on Channel 6. I mean, I hope you realize that the public is going to find that very unusual when they actually see the public hearing. They're going to feel like you didn't want them to see this. So, Bev, I know how you feel. I hope you can convince all of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further comments or questions?
Good evening. Thank you very much, President Hartstein and village trustees. I will try to keep this short and sweet. Ken Hogsness, I live at 505 Widener Road. I'd like to recant a story that was written in the Daily Herald on the night of the election, when we had their recall party had an issue going on, and there was an outburst or celebration by our village president. And I'd like to recant that the trustees in name who were stated, or that was stated that they were laughing and making fun of the issue, and that was it was Jeff Bremen and Jeffrey Bremen. This was untrue. They were at odds at the whole situation. I was standing right next to them, and we were having a conversation, and they were appalled at the situation that was going on during that celebration. And I wanted to be known to the public that these two trustees were against and appalled by the actions of our village president. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none? Yes. Yes, sir.
I saw that the agenda called for questions. Does it also allow for comment?
Anything you'd like to share, sir?
Okay, my name is Frank Sears. I live at 50 Lake Boulevard, Buffalo Grove. Judging from the letters I've been reading in the Daily Herald, the recent outrage of our community in response to Trustee Hartstein's wig-wearing burlesque of Trustee Stone is a well-taken outrage. By this action, he has demonstrated that he is not worthy of good government nor of respect of the Buffalo Grove community, and not worthy of his position on the Board of Trustees. This board should not be his enablers, should not be his supporters of this parody. This board, in my opinion, should formally resolve, to censure and reprimand him and demand his resignation from the board. Surely we can do better in Buffalo Grove. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? This time, we will move on to reports from trustees.
You already had that.
No, this was, did I do that before? I apologize, I must have done that the old way, out of habit. At this time, we have nothing on our consent agenda, and we move on to the first item on our agenda, which is ordinances and resolutions. Resolution 2010-40. I ask if there's anyone who'd like to make a motion in that regard. Trustee Trolling.
I would like to move passage of Resolution 2010-40, a resolution reprimanding Village President Elliot Hartstein. Whereas the Village of Buffalo Grove, whereas the Village Board of the Village of Buffalo Grove is the legal governing authority through which the business of the village is conducted, and whereas the Village Board has the exclusive authority to determine and establish policy for the village and create policies and standards for the conduct of elected and appointed village officials, and whereas on December 14, 2009, the Village Board of the Village of Buffalo Grove passed Resolution number 2009-50, thereby creating a code of behavior and conduct for elected and appointed officials. Said code of behavior and conduct is incorporated herein by reference as it fully set forth herein. And whereas Article 1 of the Code of Behavior and Conduct provides in part that public officials shall act in a way that will enhance public confidence in the integrity of local government. And whereas Article 1 of the Code of Behavior and Conduct provides in part that public officials shall maintain the obligation to promote and support the key principles of this code by leadership and example, so as to maintain and strengthen the public's trust and confidence in the village and its governance. And whereas Article 2, Canon 3 of the Code of Behavior and Conduct provides that public officials shall refrain from abusive conduct, personal charges, or verbal attacks, direct or inferred attacks, or implied attacks upon the character or motives of other public officials, village staff, or the public. Whereas Article 2, Canon 16.22 provides that public officials shall show respect for other public officials and village staff. And whereas Village President Elliot Hartstein, on the evening of November 2nd, 2010, conducted himself in a manner which attempted to demean, insult, and show disrespect for a member of the Village of Buffalo Grove Board of Trustees by adorning himself in a black wig and attempting to parody Trustee Lisa Stone in a derogatory manner. And whereas the above actions of Village President Elliot Hartstein were taken during an election evening gathering of the public and media. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Buffalo Grove, Cook and Lake Counties, Illinois, as follows. Section 1. President Elliot Hartstein's actions on November 2nd, 2010 are neither countenanced, condoned, nor ratified by the Village Board. Section 2. The Village Board hereby reprimands Village President Elliot Hartstein for his actions in violation of the Code of Behavior and Conduct of the Village. Section 3, Village President Elliot Hartstein is reminded of his obligation to fully comply with the Village Code of Behavior and Conduct and the terms of this resolution. Approved and adopted upon the affirmative vote by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Buffalo Grove on this 15th day of November, 2010.
Second.
Discussion on the motion. I just would like to briefly respond, since it is directed at myself. As many of you know, I tried to deal with this particular situation promptly on the morning after the incident that took place, and I did extend my sincere apologies. That public apology, both to Trustee Stone and to the public and to the members of the board, was disseminated quite widely through our local media. It was printed in full, but unfortunately, I know a lot of people do not have the opportunity to see our local papers. Not everybody subscribes and so forth. So I did want to share my public apology so everybody understands that I sincerely apologize for the actions of that particular evening. I want to apologize publicly to Lisa Stone, to my fellow board members, and to the community, the recall committee, and my family for my antics at the rally for recall supporters, where I donned a black wig and did a parody of Lisa Stone. I was just trying to have a little fun, as I often try to do. Unfortunately, in my desire to have a little fun and try to be funny, and probably vent a little built-up frustration, I lost sight of what was clearly inappropriate. I did not mean to be disrespectful to Lisa. I did not mean to take away from the respectful approach to the referendum by the others which were involved. I should have known better. I know I detracted from the respectful words that I and others had tried to share a few minutes earlier. I do respect Lisa's passion for what she believes in, even if we may not always agree, or if I may not agree with her approach. I respect the members of the community who voted, regardless of how they cast their ballots. That is what elections and democracy are all about. I am embarrassed and sorry for my foolish conduct. We all, from time to time, make mistakes. This was clearly one on my part, and I do apologize sincerely. As I said when I was trying to be serious, when our elections are over, we must put politics and the craziness that goes on in elections behind us. I am sorry that I wrongfully added to that craziness. I hope that you will accept my apology. I hope now that the election is over, we all can look forward, work with each other, respecting our differences from time to time, to work for the betterment of our community. I shared that particular apology on the morning, only hours after I had been involved in the incident. I do hope that you accept my sincerity in this regard. At this time, I ask if there are any further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll, please?
Freeman.
Aye.
Aye.
Trilling.
Aye.
Sussman.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Let us move now to probably one of the most important things which we do in terms of getting back to the business of our community, and that is the presentation of our budget. I've had the opportunity to review this, as I'm sure most members of the board, all members of the board have, and our village manager.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, may I speak for a second?
Pardon?
I'm sorry. May I speak for a second?
About, go ahead.
I apologize. For the record, I'm sorry. Trustee Deanne Glover asked that this statement be read, and I think it's important that at least, because she's not here, that it be read, if I may.
You may.
Thank you. This is from Trustee Deanne Glover. I am unable to attend the meeting tonight and request that Trustee Trilling read this statement. I will be unable to vote on the resolution reprimanding President Hartstein. However, I support the reprimand of President Hartstein for a violation of the Code of Behavior and Conduct due to his actions on the night of November 2nd. His actions were completely inappropriate, demeaning, and disrespectful to Trustee Stone and caused embarrassment to the Village of Buffalo Grove. Deanne Glover.
Thank you very much. What I was starting to say in terms of getting back to this very, very important business is our new village manager, Dane Bragg, has only been with us since September. But I have to tell you, the document that we have before us reflects an understanding and an appreciation in this very short time of the needs and the challenges that face our community. He shepherded this particular document in this presentation, which is tonight, but I know all the thanks do not go to him alone, for I know it is our staff, all of our department heads and all aspects of our staff which have worked tirelessly in putting together a budget in this very, very difficult time. These are challenging times. This is a challenging budget. And I applaud them for the hard work and the dedication that they've each shown in putting this document together, which will serve as a guide for us to use as we move ahead in the coming year during this very, very challenging time. At this time, I turn it over to our village manager, Mr. Dane Bragg, for presentation of our budget. Trustee Trilling, do you have something?
No.
Trustee Brayman, do you have something?
If you could remind the village manager, he only gets 10 minutes. Is that right?
It is the prerogative of the chair to allow. This is the most important thing that we do, one of the most important things that we do, and he can have as much time as he likes in terms of presenting this budget.
See, I had this all adjusted and I just turned everything down. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, President Hartstein and members of the board. This evening, we will present to you the budget proposal for FY 2011. And as you stated just a moment ago, President Hartstein, this is a very challenging time for the Village of Buffalo Grove, much like most communities in Illinois and throughout the Midwest. We have worked very diligently.
Maybe we need a new sound system in the budget. No, I think now he turned it off. It was better before.
Now it's on.
Thank you. Yes, given our 1973 PA system, I will now try to on the budget. Things are going swimmingly so far this evening, aren't they? It is a very challenging time for us, and we've worked diligently to put together a budget proposal that I think will meet our needs for the upcoming fiscal year. What I would stress to you is that this budget is very much a maintenance budget for the village, and we are not necessarily addressing some of the long-term issues that we need to address. And that's a process that we'll be working with the board on through 2011 as we look to our strategic planning process. We have been working toward this budget for several months, and some of the planning started before I even arrived on the scene. However, I did have the opportunity to work with senior staff through conference calls before I actually started my position here. And I do want to thank all of our staff members who are filling the front two rows of the chamber this evening for all of their efforts. And this is very much a team product. I think we stand firmly behind what we've done, even though we've had to go through some fairly challenging discussions in that process. The board also began its work in September toward developing the budget as we worked through projecting our personnel expenses, our revenues, as well as our cost control measures that would be necessary for the upcoming fiscal year in order to maintain our operations. I think that we've developed a comprehensive budget that you can be proud of that reflects the board's goals to provide appropriate levels of service as well as sound fiscal management, in addition to planning for the future of this community, which I think will be important for us. To start out this evening, I will give a brief background of 10 minutes or less, Trustee Brayman, regarding the overarching themes of this budget and revenue, and then from there we will go into opportunity for questions and answers. There's several opportunities for that. And then Scott Anderson will pick up some of those, and then we will have departmental presentations. Each one of the departments will present their budget, and then we will go into our non-operating, and Carmen Molinaro will discuss all, then the water and sewer fund, and then we'll finish out with all other funds. So I think we'll hit the big highlights early on in the presentation, and then move on from there. I also provided to you, there's color copies of this presentation at the dais for you, so you don't need to turn around and look at the screen. Everything that's on the screen is in your presentation. We did put this presentation together to give you some additional background on the budget, and this is mostly based on the budget summaries, which you will have found in your budget book that you received about a week ago. That was an addition that we made to the budget as well, to give a brief summary of our 2010 accomplishments as well as our goals for 2011. The first item that I wanted to discuss this evening is our revenue profile, and this pie chart just shows you basically what our major revenue sources are. As you can see, over half of our operating revenues come from property tax and sales tax. So when we talk about retail development, we know that over a quarter of our operating funds come from retail activities, and by the time that you actually factor in food and beverage taxes and other taxes that are generated by retailers in our community, retail will continue to be a strong emphasis for us into the future. I want to talk briefly about our projected revenues for 2011. Our income tax is projected to increase 2.2%, which is fairly modest. As you'll recall, we've seen declines nearing 20% in our income tax receipts over the last couple of years, and this is reflective of a per capita rate that's generated by the Illinois Department of Revenue, and for this year we're using an $88 per capita rate, which is what was recommended by the Illinois Municipal League. State sales tax is projected to increase a modest 2% over our actual for 2010, as well as our home rule sales tax is at the same rate. Also, food and beverage tax is projected to increase at 1.8%. This tax has actually been fairly steady and grown a little bit better than our sales tax components. Utility tax, we have not factored in an increase in utility tax. This is our first year of collected revenue, and we want to make sure that we have a solid basis for that revenue source. And it's our belief that it will come in as projected originally, and perhaps a little bit better than that, but we didn't want to factor in any additional revenue at this time. The property tax levy, the total levy is estimated at $14,233,796, which is a 5.15% total increase over last year's levy. Of that, about $1.1 million will be used for debt service, and that equates to a 5 cent per $100 of EAV increase. It is important to note that 3.95 cents of that 5 cents I just mentioned is due to decreases in total EAV within our corporate boundaries. So we're working against declining EAV at this point as well. And we don't anticipate that EAV is going to improve dramatically, as there will be reassessment going on within both Cook and Lake counties in the coming years. So this will be an issue for us as we go into the future. Our overall corporate fund revenue is $33.3 million, which equates to a 0.17% increase net of our pension transfers. So as you can see, we're not seeing any substantial growth in our corporate fund revenue, while we are sustaining obvious increases in our expenditures and our operating costs. As far as our expense distribution, this is not intended to look like Pac-Man, although it may slightly resemble Pac-Man. As you can see, about 80% of our operating costs are attributable to personnel. We are a service industry, we know that, and that is affecting our ability to provide services, in that obviously with legacy costs related to pension, as well as benefit costs and healthcare, plus the normal wages and salaries that we think of, 80% of our budget is effectively spent through the use of personnel before we actually have dollars for other types of expenditures such as capital and infrastructure. Our capital expenditures total 4% in the proposed budget this year, and we know that that's an area where we're going to have to refocus our efforts. As we look at the life cycle of many of our village facilities, equipment, and infrastructure, we're going to see this ratio increase, and that's one of the things we want to plan for in 2011. Our total corporate fund budget is $33.3 million, so it matches our revenue, which is a 0.2% decrease from 2010. As you may recall, we did not have a balanced budget. We anticipated using about $200,000 of fund reserve in 2010, and we anticipate that we will use that. Hopefully we can accommodate transfers for golf operations within that, but we don't know that yet. Our personnel expenses, as I said, that's 80% of our budget, so I wanted to hit on some of those items. We will be looking at the voluntary separation incentive for 2011, which would extend to full-time and part-time positions. We have about a $150,000 gap on the personnel side that we have to fill in some way or another in order to maintain a balanced budget. Our goal is to seek voluntary separation of employees who may be at retirement age, close to retirement age, but we also may be looking at employees who maybe are looking at a lifestyle change or have a spouse who may be able to relocate and find employment elsewhere. So we would have an incentive available to those employees who would separate from service. That's something we'll be bringing back to the board in December is our goal to implement an enrollment period for that in January. Based upon the voluntary separation program, we will then enter a process of reorganization, looking at all of our departments and functions and determining what the most efficient operating position is for the village. I think it's realistic to know that in order to maintain stable operations in the compromised revenue situation that we're in, we're going to have to bring our personnel expenses down in one way or another. So that's either going to be through wages and salaries and benefits, or it's going to be through number of people in some way or another. At the same time, we have to deal with wages of our existing employees. All of our non-represented employees did not receive a general wage increase in 2010, and we also did not provide for wage progression for those who were moving through the system through the ranges for 2010, except for fire personnel. We've got some issues to deal with there. That's one of the things that we talked about during Committee of the Whole in September, and obviously we want to make sure that we have some type of wage increase to maintain competition or maintain our competitiveness with other municipalities. The budget that you have in front of you includes a 2% general wage increase across the board for 2011. As far as our staffing numbers, we have 233 full-time and 38 part-time employees budgeted in the FY11 budget, and that is the same number as FY 2010. So again, when I say that though, we think those numbers may vary, particularly for the fire department. We know that we do have several planned retirements in that area, so we will see those numbers drop periodically throughout the year. And obviously, as we seek separation incentive for certain individuals, then we'll probably have vacancies in those positions throughout the year. But I don't anticipate we would have any reason to be above the 233 and 38 mark at this point. Training continues to be a challenge for the village. We have reduced our training expenditures over the last couple of years. And as we are in the state that we're in, particularly with planned retirements, and we're trying to maintain the same level of service, potentially with fewer employees, training will be a major component of the village's activities as it relates to employees. We are proposing to have an out-of-state training and travel policy for FY 2011, which would require any out-of-state training or travel would have to be approved by the village manager's office first, and that's based on criteria that the training cannot be obtained within local areas within the state. Also, what we propose for 2011 is that we would cover $100 towards the transportation costs for the employee, and the remaining travel costs would be at their expense if they seek out-of-state training or travel. And then also a cap of $150 per person per night for lodging for out-of-state travel. So we obviously want to keep that pretty tight. We know that's an area that we do have some individuals who do have to obtain out-of-state training and travel, but we also want to make sure that we're maximizing our opportunities here in the local area and within the state for training. The deferred compensation program will also be amended this year. It'll be paid at a rate of 2/3 of the original benefit in 2011, and then 1/3 in 2012, and that will completely phase out in 2013, and that's subject to the board's direction. With that, is the budget that's before you this evening. Also, we have deferred replacement reserve contributions. As far as utilization of reserves, we have two projects that would use existing reserves, one in the water fund, which is the deep well project, and also the voice over IP phone system, which is somewhat of a mission critical project for us. This year we're anticipating utilizing computer replacement funding for the voice over IP phone system in order to get that phased in. We do not have replacement contributions budgeted in this draft budget for FY 2011. As you may recall, the board elected to fund those at a rate of 50% for 2010, and we do not have funds for 2011. Now, we typically make those contributions at the end of the fiscal year, so if we do have additional revenue that comes in or we are able to reduce our expenses, we would have the opportunity to push money into those reserve funds, which I think we should seriously consider if we have that opportunity. As far as our all funds budget, our total budget is $59.75 million, which represents a 4.6% decrease from last year's budget, which I think is significant. And I certainly, again, appreciate the effort of our department directors and our staff to look everywhere that we possibly can. We've gone through approximately 3 iterations of budget cuts at the staff level in the last few weeks, and I know we have had some tough discussions, but I think they've been productive discussions, and we're really trying to look at a new way, obviously, to maintain a balanced budget. As far as fund balance, we anticipate a need for a fund balance of $7.05 million for our operating reserve, which would hold us at about 31% under our fund balance policy. As you may know, and I think you already know, we reduced that reserve policy to 25%. We're trying to stay above that threshold as much as we can, so we would stay at 31%, which I think is fairly good considering the situation that we're in, that we've been able to hold our reserves above 30%. As far as our fund investments, we'll be looking to maintain a fairly liquid portfolio throughout 2011. We still have some payment delays coming from the state of Illinois, and obviously with our reliance on state share revenue and not knowing what the outcome of the some $14 billion deficit at the state level is at this time, we feel it's important that we maintain a very high liquidity ratio in the event that we need to access any of those funds for operations. Our pension contributions total $5.6 million, and we have fully funded requests for this year. Our IMRF rate will increase slightly to 12.92%. As you know, pension contributions continue to be an ongoing problem for the village, as many other municipalities are dealing with. And we've averaged 12.6% increases every year for 10 consecutive years on the pension contributions. So this public safety pension reform is important to the village. How it comes out, we don't know. We'll have to see what the discussions are like in the legislature. As far as debt, we have no new debt planned for 2011. That's not to say that we may not come back and recommend issuance of debt, particularly for replacement type of programs relative to the streets and some of those facilities. But at this time, we've not performed any analysis of those, and we don't have a recommendation ready for that. We will retire just shy of $1 million in debt in 2010 by the end of this year, and in 2011 we'll retire $1,055,000 of our debt, which will leave an outstanding debt portfolio at the end of 2011 of $7.335 million, which is very competitive for a community of this size. I think we should be proud of our current debt position. One of the things that I highlighted in my budget letter is our strategic initiatives, and I won't go into lurid detail on these items because each one of the departments also are involved in many of these projects. As far as our capital, street sidewalks, and bicycle paths, we have $1.9 million programmed in the budget. This is an area where we're going to need to focus our efforts in future years, as we have not been able to fund these to a level of service that we would like to. Dundee Road Streetscape, we have $650,000 budgeted for that, and about $143,000 of that is actually out of pocket for the village. The rest is covered under grant funds. Rock Boulevard Bridge Design, the total project cost for that for the replacement is $835,000. Of that, we'll have to match about $147,000 of local dollars. Cambridge on the Lake and miscellaneous lift station repairs are budgeted at $300,000. I would say this is not the most confident number that we have in the budget because we have sustained failure at Cambridge on the Lake lift station. So we will be working through that, and some of those expenses will probably be incurred before the end of this year in order to have that lift
lift station fully operable. But we wanted to make sure we had money in there for rehabilitation of other lift stations as well. We do have some older stations in the village, and it's coming time that we do invest in those again. Arlington Heights Water Main Project is scheduled to be bid this fall and to start construction next year, so we have $980,000 budgeted for that. Pump House 7 Deep Well, this is a long-term project for emergency water supply, which is budgeted at $1.47 million. That's from the water fund as well. Pump house repairs and security improvements based on the 2008 plan, $600,000 for this coming year. And then another project that's a long-term item for us is the Wyland Road and Lake Road improvements. And we have $335,000 budgeted for engineering on that project. And you will see more information coming before the board on that in the coming months as we work with the Lake County Department of Transportation as well as Cook County Department of Transportation on that relative to noise walls and the final designs of that project. One of the other items we have is the voice over IP system, phone system, which I talked to you about. This would be phase 2 of that project, where we would actually be installing the actual phones and servers. We've completed the wiring upgrades to be ready to deploy this new phone system, and this is a significant reliability issue for us. And that's budgeted at $140,000. We also have budgeted a financial system software upgrade. And this is an area where our current IDC/CDC software is no longer supported, and we do not have the ability to process debit and credit card transactions under our current software. We also do not have the capability of providing online billing services, and we also do not have a budgeting module within the current software. So we want to evaluate options to upgrade that software and make sure that we can provide better services to our residents. As we talk about reducing our operating expenses, obviously the ability to conduct business over the internet and to provide debit and credit transactions is going to become more critical as we look at our customer service areas. As far as strategic planning, we'll be working on several initiatives relative to operations that will involve the board and many of the staff members here this evening. We'll be looking at development of a communications handbook or communications policy from the village of how we approach communications, what our standards are, and making sure that we have consistent communication from all the village, and also that we have healthy communication with the board as well. We'll be looking at several financial planning projects and where we'll be doing pro forma projections for the water fund, for our street program, as well as a 5-year projection for our operating funds. We'd really like to get a better handle on where our revenue streams are headed and what that means for our future operations so that the board can make good and timely decisions regarding those items. The health plan continues to be another issue for us. We have a significant increase of about 18% in our overall cost structure for the health plan for 2011. We have assembled an employee health and wellness committee to evaluate options, which they have met 3 times already, and have been exploring what the plan is. It's kind of the research phase that they're in right now, and moving into what plan options can be out there. We're looking at some options, potentially a major medical type of program, as well as exploring a high deductible plan to look at some different options to rein in those healthcare costs. This is going to continue to be kind of an ongoing issue for us as the new federal healthcare bill regulations come into play in future years, so we need to make very wise decisions about how we manage that plan. We'll also be restructuring the budget document. What you see this evening and some of the items that you received in the printed budget are a preview of some of those items. We want to look more toward program-based budgeting and performance management type of budgeting and budgeting for outcomes. So we'll be looking at the overall structure of the budget and what opportunities we have there to improve that. We look at 3 basic parameters there. One, the budget is a communications device, and I believe firmly that our budget should communicate our plan for the upcoming year very clearly. It's the same for anyone, not just us, but anyone in the public who wants to know what we're doing. Also, the second tier would be the budget as a strategic management device, and again, to what I talked about. And 3, the budget is a reporting device, so it reports accurately what our actions have been and what we plan them to be in the future. The last item under strategic planning we'll be looking at in 2011 is revisiting the employee evaluation tool. That's something that we've been meeting on, and that we have a management team set up to revisit that in the coming months. We'll be back in front of the board to discuss that again. We'd really like to get that moving. What our plan is is, though, is to phase that in instead of rolling that out to the entire personnel, entire workforce at one time. We look at phasing it in with senior staff first, working out the glitches in that system, and then making a larger rollout that to all employee groups. So that's something that I know a lot of work and hard work and effort has gone into, and something that I think we need to have consistent evaluation processes throughout the village. So in summary, we will be looking, as I said, at a maintenance budget. As far as our capital program, as you know, we're reviewing the CIP, and as well as reviewing the budget, we're really focusing on those key improvements that are absolutely necessary and/or intergovernmental relation type of projects, such as the Arlington Heights Road Water Main Project and Wyland Road, where that's a long-term investment for the village. Expenditure control is going to be a major issue for us in 2011. We know that as we tighten the screws up on the budget, then we really have to watch what we're spending, and that's an area where we'll be devoting a lot of our effort in 2011. We're looking at obviously developing long-term strategies. We want the staff and the board to work together toward that effort so that we can really look at some of these bigger projects and make sure we're going down the right path with those, and we have the proper financing structures in place to accommodate those projects. And lastly, it's very much a team effort. I said that when I began my presentation, and I believe that firmly. I certainly appreciate all of our staff working together, even with a new manager in place who didn't know what was going on when he got here. I really appreciate him educating me throughout the process. Sometimes they educated me in an interesting way, but they did educate me. And certainly coordinating our business units, that's something we'll be looking at, is how we cross-train and we work together to be able to provide those services at the best possible rate. And strong communications are going to continue to be a pillar of our operations for 2011. So that summarizes my presentation, and certainly I would be willing, and Scott and I would both be willing to take any questions or comments that you have at this time before we move into the
Trustee Brayman first.
Thank you. First of all, Dane, when you do these next time, if you can differentiate some of the colors, because your Pac-Man has the same yellow as legal services. I was very concerned that 80% of our budget was going to legal services. I know Mr. Racer would be happy, but yeah. But I do have, regarding some of the things that you talked about, you talked briefly about the voluntary separation agreements. Now, we've talked about it in some length. If you, for the public, explain the benefit of that. The fact that the people who would be leaving are on the upper end of the pay schedule, hopefully being replaced by the entry levels and saving some funds. So if you can explain that more for the public.
Absolutely. What we'll be looking at is implementing a program where we target mainly people who have longer years of service, who are at a higher end of the pay range, also may have longevity and other types of incentives that younger employees don't have. Where we provide an incentive that they can separate voluntarily from the village. There's a couple of different options or opportunities there for us. One is if we outright replace those positions, we can replace them with entry-level employees at a lower rate of pay. So you have about a 5 to 7 year window where you're actually recapturing savings in our operating costs. Oftentimes in a voluntary separation, or even sometimes in a layoff situation, you don't recoup a lot of that money in the first year. It comes back in years 2, 3, and 4 as you see those reduced personnel expenses come into play. The other area that can affect us is if there's pension reform, the IMRF pension, for example, having been reformed. If we hire employees after January 1 into the IMRF system, they go into the Tier 2. So our contribution over the lifetime of that employee is likely to be less as far as a long-term legacy cost for that individual. The other opportunity that we have is to reorganize. So we may look at some areas and actually reduce personnel overall once we have a little bit more room to work with and figure out how efficient we really can be with the organizational chart.
Thank you. Another question I have is, we talk about the number of employees we have. I know you did a survey recently, and I don't know if you have those numbers with you or not, but regarding the number of employees per capita, and I know we were pretty low. We were one of the lowest. I think it was like 5.6 per capita.
5.39 compared to 6.49, which is
so if you can
pretty
talk
lean.
About that a little bit.
Yes, we are in fact very lean, and that's one of the areas where when we talk about this idea of reducing personnel, we have to be very careful what we do. We are one of the more competitive communities in the metro area and probably throughout the state as far as our number of employees per 1,000 individuals we have living in the community. Obviously, we want to maintain that and improve that if we can, but that does present some specific challenges, meaning that we're not particularly heavy with people in the organization. So but we'll work through everything we can to make it lean.
Well, also, I mean, obviously, we want to make sure if we're going to get leaner from the right departments, we don't want to affect service, obviously, to our community. Last is regarding the health plan. You talked about different things that you're doing. I think the board has, over the past several years, identified that not only do we need to modify the plan to get higher deductibles, et cetera, but I think we have to look towards the future, and I know it can't be in this budget, but in the future with our negotiations, et cetera, of increased participation in the percentage by the employees. I think that's something we have to begin to work on now through this employee group and realize that over the next several years.
I agree wholeheartedly. That's something I think we need to prepare our personnel for, and knowing that that's something obviously we don't want to throw on them at the last minute, but it may be something we want to phase in over a number of years so they're familiar with it, they know what's coming, and they can plan for it. That's one of the reasons, too, why our group is looking at different options so that people can size the plan based on what their needs really are. Some people may be very comfortable with only a major medical type of coverage, while others may want a very premium type of coverage. Unfortunately, under our current plan offerings, we charge the same premium for both of our plans, our PPO plan and what I call our lookalike HMO plan. And the reality is that the cost of benefits for the lookalike HMO are far higher than what they are for the PPO plan. And I think we have to get some equality there in what you're paying for and what you're getting.
Thank you. Dane, I just had a couple things. First of all, I just wanted to mention one of the things which I thought was a tremendous addition to this particular budget, and one which can be expanded upon, and that is basically moving to that programmatic aspect so that people can pick up any department and look at those summaries at the beginning of each budget. And somebody says, oh, people look at numbers and people may not understand. But when people look at functions, they can see through this budget every single department, an enumeration of what those functions are, and an enumeration of what the employees are, who the employees are, how many employees there are. And I think that's a very valuable tool for the public to see. And the more we can expand upon that type of thing so that when people pick up a document like this, I think that's a great step forward in that regard. Going back to a couple ideas that we talked about a moment ago, obviously, as was pointed out, and that was one of the things that I'm happy that Trustee Braman mentioned it, because I thought that is a significant fact, that we're as lean as we are compared to other communities. But notwithstanding, I want to go back to that particular paragraph and ask a couple questions where you talk about that we will be evaluating options to reduce aggregate personnel expenses relative to part-time services and partner opportunities with other governments, benefits, and pension costs, and so forth, and outsourcing. I wonder if there's anything, first of all, taking the first issue of evaluating personnel services relating to part-time services. I'd just like to ask about that a little bit, only because of the fact that obviously we are lean, and obviously we want to have as many people as we need to provide quality services. But I'm just wondering if you can expand upon that a little bit, because when you basically that talks about the part-time services, and I'm not suggesting we cut anybody in any way, in a particular place, but the valuation, when we're talking about full-time employees, there's a difference because we have to pay benefits, whereas the part-time we don't. So why the focus on the part-time versus the full-time?
Well, I think that as we go through, the voluntary separation program will be focused more on full-time employees. We will probably have a benefit for part-time employees, but the main thrust of that is going to be full-time employees. So I don't want to emphasize that we're singling out any one employee group, because we're certainly not. And also, as I talk about, if we reduce our numbers or that we have people leave because of separations, we don't want to take the position that because this one position is vacant, we're not going to fill that position. It has to be held open for a specific period of time. Rather, what we intend to do is regroup at the senior staff level and evaluate what positions do we need to fill and what positions can we hold on to and what positions can we reorganize. So I want to make it very clear that we're not going to take the approach of, boy, we're just going to leave 18 positions open and Chief Babber's down 10 people, so what? And we certainly don't want to take that approach. As far as part-time positions, I think he's okay.
He hasn't even turned pink.
I think as far as part-time positions, we look at that and we look at the service provision model. One of the things I also mentioned in my budget letter is looking at, for instance, the hours that we hold at Village Hall. We do have extended hours on Monday evenings, which have been great, and I think that's a good service to our residents. But the problem that we have is actually covering the remaining hours during the week. So we may be able to squeak out some efficiencies if we, for instance, close early one day a week, stay open late one day out of the week. Things like that, where we look at what our overall manning needs are going to be as far as part-time personnel. So we're very open to it. We also will look at positions that are currently filled as full-time. Can they be filled as part-time? What are the service needs there, and how can we best approach it? So I want to say that we're very open. It's anything's on the table. We want it to be as efficient as possible.
Going to the other concept about partner opportunities with other units of government, are there any particular examples that you can give us that you might be looking at where we might have some opportunity for savings in that regard?
Absolutely. At this point, we're working with a coalition of managers that represents all the North Shore and Northwest communities, and we're looking at things such as we've partnered in the past, for instance, on the crack sealing program for the street division. We're looking at that again. We're looking at partnering on elevator maintenance contracts, certain types of infrastructure maintenance, and that we're looking at some of the more basic type of services right now. That committee is going to expand that to look at other opportunities as well. So what can we do to work together, to band together as a group of municipalities, leverage our buying power, and hopefully gain some efficiencies out of that?
And what about, in terms of two other areas, the pension costs? Are there any projections based upon an assumption of, for example, if we were able to succeed in receiving a rolling amortization, for example, during the session of the legislature, what impact that might have on the budget from a dollar standpoint? Do we have any projections?
Any rolling amortization projections yet? I'm not sure, Scott, do you have anything?
It's just under 15% if we did have a rolling amortization where they extended the window out.
What does that mean in dollars?
That would be about $600,000.
And with regard to the last was the outsourcing you referenced. Are there any examples of outsourcing which you think need to be evaluated? Obviously, that's a sensitive issue, of course, but one that I just wonder if there are any ideas that have been bandied about or other communities have, that you've seen examples that other communities have used that maybe we should be looking at.
Well, that's an interesting question, and one that I don't have a firm answer to at this point. But one of the discussions that we've been having with our group of municipalities in the partnering discussion is even municipalities bidding on services to other municipalities where they have core competencies. For example, our fleet maintenance function is known throughout the Northwest area as being very efficient, very well run. We have a very lean cost structure in that area. So there's an opportunity that we may even have the ability to bid to provide fleet maintenance services to other communities. Not to say that we will, but I think we look at basically any service, whether that's an enterprise service or it's a general operating service. We talked about certain maintenance type of activities. One of the areas where we look at is with part-time employees under the new healthcare bill. By 2013, we have to either have employees at a certain amount of hours they work on a weekly basis, or we have to provide healthcare benefits. So there's a lot of different areas there that we look at and figure out what are the longevity costs or the future costs that we're going to incur there. And I think from our staff's perspective, I'll speak on their behalf, hopefully they won't throw anything at me. I think anything's on the table. We've had a preliminary discussion about, for instance, building inspections. And I think our feeling there is that based on other communities that we've talked to who have outsourced that, they've not been pleased with the outcome. We've talked about, for instance, golf course operations. In that area, other communities have had problems there. So it's not to say we won't talk about it, but I think that we look at it very comprehensively and we decide, are we willing, if we're going to save a little bit of money, is the level of control that we relinquish in that process going to be worth it in the long term for the village? And I think that's the decision that ultimately the board has to make.
Thank you. Trustee Bremen, do you have something further before we move on?
I want to just make sure that the public knows that the budget is online, correct?
Yes.
And
it will be online.
It will be online, of course, and including the pretty pictures. Okay, I just want to make sure the public understands they can access it at any time. And this is a planning document. Doesn't mean just because we put down $39 million, whatever, that you're going to spend it all, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions before we move on? Proceed.
Okay, we will proceed to department summaries, and the first staff person will be Katie Newkirk, who will present Office of the Village Manager.
Good evening. I'd like to also introduce, representing the Office of the Village Manager, Bob Giddens, our IT Director, also Bob File, the Village Planner, and Bill Reza, the Village Attorney, representing from Reza and Zimmerman. The Office of the Village Manager consists of the divisions that you see up there: legislative, OVM, information technology, and legal. The total budget request for fiscal year 2011 is a total of $1,717,306. Our budget detail begins on page 57 and concludes on page 72. Just to provide a brief overview of these divisions, because they are multifaceted. The legislative division provides for the operation of 10 village boards, commissions, and committees. The Office of the Village Manager works closely with all village departments to carry out the policies as set forth by the village board. The Information Technology Department oversees the village's information systems, including computer and telephone systems, 6 local networks, a wide area network, and 240 personal computer stations. And the legal division budget provides for legal service to the village board, commissions, committees, and staff, as well as prosecution services for the village. The retainer for the village attorney provides for his attendance at all village board meetings, as well as public hearings at both the Plan Commission and the ZBA. And then attorney fees in the legal division budget are directed for special projects and assignments as directed by the staff and the village board. On a regular basis, we conduct a survey of comparable communities as it relates to legal services, both in-house as well as contractual. We conducted that task again this year, and the survey results are very favorable for the village in terms of competitive and cost-effective rates. And we definitely are confident to say that the legal services that we are provided by Reza and Zimmerman are exceptional and extremely responsive. Just to provide a few highlights of the 2010 accomplishments. We established Freedom of Information Act procedures this past year. We implemented a policy. We have at least one Freedom of Information officer representing each department. Our IT division created an excellent database to help us manage all the FOIA requests that we received for the village, and then all the responses that are carried out. On May 3rd, the village board approved the village environmental plan, which includes a number of different elements, including water conservation, energy efficiency, recycling, and waste reduction. The components of the environmental plan will be carried out in 2011 as well. As the board is aware, we had an extremely successful farmers market in 2010. It was led by our staff liaison, Susan Levy, and an outstanding volunteer pool of volunteers of the community. There were a total of 17 markets, and they were held every Sunday from June to October. And the budget reflects the continuation of the farmers market for 2011. We are proud to announce that the village was awarded a significant grant amount of approximately $10,000 to carry out the farmers market for the next fiscal year. So that certainly helped us as we continue that excellent program. And given the challenging economic time, the village continues to be extremely responsive to resident needs and business needs and services. For example, this past year, we coordinated an event in cooperation with the Buffalo Area Chamber, as well as the County Commissioner David Stolman, called Resources for Surviving the Economy. It was an excellent program, very well received. We also coordinated a health and wellness fair. So as these needs continue to be presented to the village, working in support with the village board, we are responding to those and coordinating unique programs. As President Hartstein indicated, the Buffalo Grove Symphonic Band will be celebrating their 10th anniversary next year. The band, from a financial perspective, is completely self-supporting. They receive all their revenue for operations from business and resident sponsors, as well as revenue from their 2 formal performances. So there is no line item specifically for the band, just staff support that's provided for their operation. And again, the IT division conducted a consolidation of network servers for better reliability and created an excellent database for our performance evaluation system to help us manage that. And that's a system that spans across all departments. Some of the goals for 2011 as we move forward. We will be presenting for village board consideration an update of the village's sign code. This is an initiative that we've been working staff personnel working with the Plan Commission, Zoning Board, and liaisons from the Village Board. This will be presented to the Village Board, we anticipate, in the first quarter of next year. We are working on an upgrade of a video server for VGTV. It's basically the static slides that you see on VGTV for Comcast and AT&T subscribers. We anticipate that we're working on that currently. We anticipate it to roll out again in the first quarter of next year. Within the budget, we have an upgrade of our Microsoft Office software, which is currently on a 1997 system, so that's provided for in the budget. And we'll be presenting for Village Board consideration an updated economic development work plan. This plan is really one of the most aggressive in the area. It sets forth very detailed business retention as well as business attraction initiatives. So they'll be presented for the Village Board's consideration by the end of the year, and it'll set forth a very detailed analysis of goals and initiatives for the new year. A couple of the budget variances I'd like to point out. We have under personnel services a reduction of one full-time employee within our department, which was from this current fiscal year, so the budget savings are reflected in the upcoming fiscal year. We had a retirement within our department, and so we modified that position from a full-time position to a part-time position. That's something that's been consistent that we've done for many years, and that's reflected in this budget for this single position. We've renegotiated our contract with Take One Video, so within the budget is a budget savings in that line item for cable television programming. In the health insurance for OBM, there's a change in coverage for one employee, so the difference that you see within OBM is reflected for that reason. And there is a decrease in the village newsletter amount. The village newsletter, we're in the process right now of conducting a survey as it relates to communication systems, how our residents want us to communicate with them. Historically, when we've done that survey, the village newsletter was the #1 communication tool. So we'll have those results for the board in the next couple of weeks. But the village newsletter is included within our department budget. The Buffalo Grove Days newsletter, though, is being transferred to the Buffalo Grove Days account, and the water fund newsletter, which was being expended from our department, will be transferred to the water fund. So those expenses are just basically transferred to another operating area. And then the legal division, the estimated actual that you see for special counsel is primarily the expenses that we had pertaining to the local electoral board, which we discussed previously with the village board. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Of course, there's the team.
Trustee Berman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gita, the concept of an economic development work plan is something that certainly is welcome, and I commend the Office of Village Manager for working on it. It's the first time I think we've heard about this initiative, and I was hoping maybe you could expand a little bit on where this is going to differ from the economic development plans that you have published over the last several years and that we've seen, and who's involved in the creation of this, when did it begin, what's the timeline for its development, who's going to be involved in the development over time, et cetera.
Well, the work plan is something that we'll be putting together, and it involves a number of different staff personnel. As we proceed through projects, it will be, of course, Mr. Bragg and myself. We have representatives from the building department, engineering. We pretty much involve all the departments in creation of that. The business retention activities includes initiatives that we feel are very important because we want to make sure that we have a good understanding of the business needs of our current business environment. Some of our largest employers we like to meet with on a regular basis just to find out, do you have any questions pertaining to your business operation in the community? How can we better serve you? Once we have a good understanding of the current business environment, it really puts us in a good position to be able to attract new business industry to Buffalo Grove. I think the big difference between something that you've seen historically and the one that we're proposing is we'd like to have measures of targeted dates of when we would anticipate projects to come to fruition, and certainly what we can control. I think the biggest frustration that we have is a lot of these project parcels we cannot control. Baronesa Plaza, for example, is the land area that's a total of about 23 acres in the north and southwest corner of Milwaukee Avenue and Deerfield Parkway. We annexed that property in 1991, and if it was up to all of us, we would see a nice, high-quality commercial development at that corner, but unfortunately, because the village doesn't own the land, our efforts have been primarily focused on working with the landowner and working with developers and trying to encourage to the best of our ability a viable plan that would best suit the village and suit all parties. The village board, as you well know, has provided a number of incentives, and that's something that is very valuable that we're able to have and to promote to the development community. We had offered an incentive to the Hyatt Place Suites Hotel as an incentive to operate there, and it went into foreclosure. So, but I guess what we'd like to have is specific measures and then adjust those, so it would be an evolving document that we work on throughout the year.
Thank you.
Trustee Brayman.
Thank you. Dovetailing that a little bit. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody, a resident, just a couple days ago, in which we were talking about something similar to that, but the use of residents as well, because I think we have a lot of unique talent in the village, people who have expertise that maybe staff members don't have, and I'd like to see you reach out to some members to see whether or not they can help, and maybe an ongoing commission made up of staff and village residents who can formulate ideas and maybe do something. So I ask you to look at that. Talking also about the newsletter, looking at it, I believe that the newsletter is a viable and is a very important part of our communication, and I don't necessarily want to do away with it, but maybe what we can do, at least in the short term, is modify it in some degree. Maybe not make it as pretty, maybe I don't know what the cost is, but maybe you streamline it a little bit, make it a little bit less attractive, and maybe save some money, maybe less pages, etc. I think the information is important, not necessarily how we present it. That may be able to reduce the size, reduce the cost. There's also obviously the postage that's involved in it too. So I think we're spending a lot of money. Hopefully somewhere down the line we can look at it as doing it as an email or put on a website, but not everybody has that capability. But the more we can utilize that type of thing, maybe the less cost there would be. So I'd ask you to look at that. Going in, and I don't know if you're looking at, if you're going to go through each of the budgets, each of the departments?
I wasn't in detail, but I'm happy to go.
Well, just for instance, on the I was looking at the first one. I think is ours, the legislative, and you have account number 4913. You have council chamber service agreement for $2,000, and it didn't identify what that was. And just for the public notice, we're sitting here with two budgets. One is the short form, I'll say, and the other one is the detail, which is much more explicit as far as what these things are. And neither one of them really explain what the council chamber's service agreement is. Can you explain that?
It's actually not a contract agreement, but we have historically brought in the company Sound Vision that installed the audiovisual equipment in the council chambers. So when we've needed contracted assistance related to the AV system, we brought in this company. So any expenses as part of that maintenance, if you will.
Okay, so that's in case of a concern or problem, you're not anticipating anything for the $2,000, is that correct? And then the other one is the strategic planning for $3,000.
Strategic planning is something that Mr. Gregg had referenced in his comments. What we'd like to do probably mid-year is have a strategic plan retreat that would include department directors as well as the village board to talk about some of the New Year initiatives and other issues.
Okay.
Trustee, something further?
Go ahead. Okay.
Trustee Sussman.
I just wanted to make a comment about the Village News. I would hate to see it less attractive. It represents the village of Buffalo Grove, and what's in it, that's the first thing people look at when they take it out of their mailbox. So I would hate to see that happen. If we were looking to save money, perhaps instead of 6 issues, we could make the number of issues less, but just keep it looking the way it looks right now.
Can I add just to discuss that for a second? I would rather have it less, well, I'll say less attractive, a different format. I don't know, necessarily it has to be color, etc. It still can look good, but I'd rather have it go out more times than less and get more information than less information. I'm not saying it should be ugly, but I think we can save some money possibly in how it's formatted. That's all.
Just on that particular, I know that some communities, in fact, have shifted. And we've obviously, this is highly valued based upon the surveys we've done, and people do value it, and I think we need to respect that every time we've asked, what is your number one source for looking at information for the village, it seems, and I could be wrong, but it seems that every time the village newsletter comes out on top. So I think we can be proud of, and it's something people like. However, piggybacking with that, I hate to ever see us do what some communities have done, which is totally eliminate and say it's all going to be online, because everybody doesn't have the ability to do that. And in addition to that, some people simply like to be able to get something they can leaf through and they can refer back to, and it's an easy tool. I do believe that we should consider possibly evaluating cutting back on the, maybe spacing them out differently, because of the postage and the cost coupled with that, becomes an expensive venture, and I think we can cut back. Similarly, when we get one of our special editions is the Buffalo Grove Days edition, and I think it's great and I love it, but I think we need to evaluate whether or not the trifold or some expanded version of that can give the same amount of information to everybody. It's nice and it's really cool to have that whole book, but how much money can we save? And I think it has to be evaluated. I'm not saying we should do it, but I think that needs to be talked about with the Buffalo Grove Days Committee and get their input and feedback. Is there another way we can basically, because we print those trifolds up, for example, in addition to the other, maybe we can expand that and make it even a little more expansive and have the same information at a lot less cost. But those are just examples in that particular arena. Trustee Brayman.
And maybe even, and I'm not sure if this would go over well with the staff or with us when we think about it, is maybe even possibly offering some kind of advertisement to offset some of the costs too. I know Carmen does it on the carts, et cetera. We have advertising to offset some of that cost. Maybe we look at some limited amount of advertising in the newsletter to offset those costs.
No, I know Stevenson High School actually has done that with regard to their publication in the past. When they were doing it. It's something that needs to be, whether we do it is another story, but it's probably something we should evaluate. And I think a very valid suggestion.
We are exploring that option, and we easily put together a number of different options as well as the associated costs and bring it back to the village board for consideration.
Thank you. Other questions before we move on? Thank you.
Beginning on page 76 of the budget is the total for finance and general services. The proposed fiscal year 2011 budget for this department is $915,742, or just under a 1.5% increase over the current year's budget. During the current year, the following was accomplished. We coordinated a successful debt issuance of 2 general obligation bonds totaling $7,760,000. These are Series 2010A and Series 2010B general obligation bonds. Of that total, $5.16 million was refinance debt, and $2.6 million was new debt for our village-wide drainage improvement program. As part of the process, staff, along with Trustee Brayman, met with both rating houses to talk about the financial condition of the village. As a result of those discussions, we received AAA ratings from both rating houses. As a result of those discussions and that credit enhancement, we'll be able to save almost $556,000 in interest costs over the next 10 years by refinancing that debt, and again with the enhanced credit rating. Other accomplishments during the year include receipt of the Certificate of Achievement in Financial Reporting, maintaining entire property tax level under 10% of the total bill, that being the village's portion of the property tax, and also submitting and managing the fiscal year 2010 through 2014 capital improvement plan. Goals for 2011, and many of these are cyclical in nature, and those would again include, we would like to submit at the conclusion of the fiscal year 2010 audit to receive the award for the financial reporting, and also to successfully manage the fiscal year 2011 through 2015 capital improvement plan. And one of our primary goals, and what was referenced with Manager Bragg, is taking a look at some technology enhancements within the finance department. It remains both a goal and actually a challenge within the department, is working with, in some ways, our outdated technologies, and many of the support that, much of the support we provide, there is some redundancy and some double entry of data based on the systems we have. And actually the financial platform we use right now, we have been told that it won't be supported anymore. We already have two modules that aren't supported. So really, it's looking at some of those technologies to create both efficiencies within the operation and also, create more of a presence to our community and be more available through online transactions as well. Some of the primary expenditures within the department are, as alluded to with some of the newsletters, our postage. We spend approximately $74,000 in postage. Now, a portion of that is for the newsletter, but a bulk of that is for our water billing mailings. Also, we have $30,000 allocated to maintenance contracts, of which $25,000 is annual software payment to our current vendor. We also expend nearly $40,000 on Buffalo Grove days. And our annual audit is $39,000. Now, we went out for an RFP for 2009. We had a very successful audit, and we were able to save about $11,000. So we're continuing those savings. We've got to bump up a little bit this year, but that's just due to there's going to be some additional grant reporting we'll be required to do. And then also within our consulting or essentially all other expenses, we've got $34,000, and that's essentially to pay for our outsourcing of the water billing processing, as well as the use of independent actuary to calculate our pension obligations, both for the police and firefighter pensions, as well as our health care obligations. We have to report within our financial statements an OPEB liability. So he provides that service for us as well. Again, it's essentially a maintenance budget, no reduction in any services, and again, with whatever technologies we can incorporate, hoping to enhance the services we currently provide. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
One question, you just talked about the mailing costs and so forth, and it just brings to mind another question where we might be able to realize some savings, and I wonder if it's been evaluated, and that's e-billing. I know that I think I've seen more and more people be giving the option by many companies and so forth to have their billing done online as opposed to spending the time and money of that mailing. Have we ever done any evaluation on what we could do in terms of any savings? Or, I mean, obviously maybe if there are other costs affiliated, but in terms of giving that option to people, are there savings? And maybe it's something that we could evaluate. Have we ever looked at that?
I don't know if there would be, as far as the mailing standpoint, I don't know if there'd be a significant savings, only because the mass mailing to all the households, it's tough for the systems to sort out those who would pay electronically. But to offer that services, there'd be other benefits. May not be in postage, but it'd be for other, types of services.
I mean, convenient. I mean, I think piggybacking on that concept, I think the more with the use of electronic media these days by all of our residents on a fairly large-scale basis in this particular community, I think the more we can do in terms of making things, obviously we talk about the need to keep our service hours and so forth, obviously, and have open Monday nights, and I think we need to do that for people who aren't available. But a lot of people like to do their transactions online, and to the extent that we can do more in terms of anything. Any of the services that we provide where people need to interface with personnel, where we could do that and explore what can be done online, I think we need to evaluate that.
Where we would realize savings would be in the bank fees, where they're processing these checks manually, and actually we would receive the cash a little bit quicker. So, although not in these times we're not earning much money, but the quicker we can get money into our accounts and starting working for us, that's always a benefit.
Did you have something to add?
If I could, I just wanted to touch on the e-billing aspect, and I think that's something that we should pursue for the village. And there's a lot of efficiencies to it. It will take a few years to realize all of those efficiencies. But in my prior life, we implemented an e-billing system initially for our water account system. And it takes a little while to get people used to it, and we did have to incentivize it at first. But the reduction in processing time is unbelievable, and you do gain some reductions in postage and just general customer service time as well. So that's something when we look at new financial software, we want to make sure that we're going to have the ability to do that and do it efficiently.
One other question before I go on to others. Obviously, I certainly applaud the village, and this has been a long time coming, but the diligence in getting the bond rating that we got and being able to get good interest rates. We're also living through a time which is obviously a challenging time economically, but because of that, interest rates and labor costs and costs for projects are probably lower than they would typically be because of demand and the need for people looking for work, looking for projects. I only ask, and I'm not suggesting anything in particular, anything and that we should or should not do, but I would urge the staff to explore, are there capital projects that because we might have the restriction, well, this is a bad time to do it, we should at least evaluate, and I would urge staff to come back and say, are there any projects that we could or should explore, because this is the time when we're going to be able to get the best bang for our buck with our AAA rating and with the economy and interest rates. It's something I just urge you to evaluate. I mean, I'm not suggesting any particular project. I'm just saying it's something I urge you to look at. Trustee Trilling.
Thank you. Piggybacking on that, I would assume that the AAA rating has benefited the current borrowing environment that we're in the bonds we currently have. And you made mention that over 10 years we're going to save over $500,000. My question is, if by chance our rating was to drop over the next year, 2, 3, when we were not to change any of our, not increase our borrowing in any way, it would not have a detrimental effect in any way on our current bonds that we hold.
No, there would be no retrospective application of a change in rating to the previous debt.
Okay, and is there anything that you think that we're doing now or in the near future that would jeopardize our ability to maintain that AAA rating?
I think critical going forward will be management's continued response to the economic environment, having plans in place and having long-term planning, identifying capital needs, and really, at this point, protecting reserves.
Okay, and do you think we're doing that right now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bremen.
Thank you, Scott. You mentioned about the fact about the auditors. Will we be using the same auditor as last year, or are we going to be sending out a new RFP?
No, we have a 3-year engagement. This will be year 2 with the current auditors.
And is this the proper time to ask about the Human Resource Department? A question?
I can try and answer it, or we can let Art speak for himself.
I just, usually my focus here is to reduce the expenses, but I have a concern here about special counsel and legal fees. I mean, obviously, we know we were going through some time with negotiations of a fire contract, et cetera, short-term and long-term, and you have a certain amount set aside for special counsel. Do you really, is it an accurate amount? Are you concerned about maybe that may be artificially low?
In discussions even prior to tonight's meeting, we looked at that number. It may be low, depending on some recent news.
Mm-hmm.
What we'll do is we'll capture any possible increase within our appropriation ordinance. We'll hope for the best, but there is a potential that we may overshoot that number. Again, we'll capture it in the appropriation.
If you could keep us abreast as far as how that's progressing, I think I would appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Trustee Berman.
Thank you. A couple quick comments, questions. In dovetailing to the discussion earlier about electronic billing, et cetera, I know that there has been several instances where we've explored also electronic payment options, and I would encourage the staff to continue to look at that. I know that last time around it wasn't particularly viable, but I know that marketplace changes fairly rapidly. I know that would also be a very well-received benefit that the community, I believe, would embrace fairly quickly. And I would encourage you to continue to look at that and whether it becomes viable at some point, both from an administrative and financial perspective, so that we can offer that to the community. As far as the comment earlier by the village president, I understand the perspective. I respectfully disagree. I think that the budget message that was provided by the village manager reflects an appropriate level of conservative planning and an attempt to protect the reserves of this village. I don't believe that it's prudent to move forward on projects simply because it's perceived as a bargain at a time when the level of uncertainty in the economy, and both locally and nationally, is so significant. I think one of the reasons we've achieved the AAA bond ratings from both services, and this village has maintained and weathered the storm better than most, is because we have been very careful, and the staff has done a terrific job over the years, whether it was your predecessor or yourself, in offering a fairly cautious approach where we didn't overextend ourselves. We didn't get into the kind of situation like the city of Chicago where they have to sell their assets in order to pay operating expenses, when we're struggling to meet current obligations because of debt service obligations and whatnot. And I think that we have to be very cautious. You can declare the recession's over, and from my perspective, I hope it is and that things are improving, but I think that the budget message that we received here is that to the extent they're improving very slowly. And I would urge an appropriate level of caution. It doesn't mean we can't look at things. You're right.
That's all I was saying.
But it will be a difficult sell to me to move forward with aggressive capital programming based on debt service borrowing, in the short run at least, because of the uncertainty in the economy.
Thank you. No, I agree with it, with that, just so you understand where I was coming from. I was just saying we need to evaluate. Obviously, the board on each case would need to, based upon if there's not a case to be made that would even be persuasive, then obviously it's not something that should be pursued. But my only suggestion was that there may be examples in particular areas where there may be benefits that you might feel that might be a good investment for the village from that standpoint. It may not be something that would be prudent at this particular time, and you might have a projected timetable that you might recommend and so forth. But and obviously we need to stay as tight as we can, and obviously we need to keep that budget as tight as you've done, and you've already done that. Proceed. Anybody have further questions? Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Good evening. The proposed human resources budget begins on page 77 and continues through page 80. And the total's $882,121, which is approximately 11% higher than the 2010 HR budget. This variance is due in large part to increases in costs associated with our village-wide risk management program, and includes both increases in our actual premium as well as the anticipated deductibles in 2011. Accomplishments in 2010 by the HR department include the expansion of the Human Resources Director's role to include providing general in-house labor or legal resources to staff as a supplement to those provided both by the village attorney as well as Special Labor and Employment Council. The providing of staff support to the Village Board of Fire and Police Commission on an ongoing basis, including the assistance in the successful completion of the 2010 new firefighter-paramedic testing process, the successful completion of both the regulatory assistance assessment and a survey hazard audit by the Intergovernmental Risk Management Agency, and the revision of the village's personnel records system for both active and inactive employees. The primary expenses contained within the 2011 Human Resources budget include the risk management pool premium and deductible, which includes, again, both workers' compensation and general liability lines of coverage. So really it's all of the village's insurance lines of coverage other than health, dental, and life insurance. Also, it includes fees for special counsel that involve labor and employment law matters, and the Fire and Police Commission operational expenses that includes, for 2011, a new police officer testing process and a police sergeant promotional process. The goals for the Human Resources Department in 2011 include the completion of a contract reopener with the Buffalo Grove Professional Firefighters Association, the implementation of a new classification and compensation system for village employees, the comprehensive review of the medical, dental, life insurance, and supplemental programs currently offered by the village, as well as implementation of any recommended plan changes for an effective date of 2011 into 2012 and forward, depending on our obligations under healthcare reform. And finally, the completion of a full review and revision of the village's personnel manual in 2011. With that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Trustee Bremen.
Thank you. Art, I notice on line 3714, there's a fairly significant increase, about 43%, 44% for the Police and Fire Commission. And you mentioned something about the new process. Is this as a result of new processes, or is it new testing, or an additional test? Can you explain that?
In 2010, the Board of Fire and Police Commission had just one test, and that was for to establish a new firefighter paramedic eligibility list. In 2011, not only will the board establish a new police officer eligibility list, but also conduct a police sergeant promotional process. So in essence, their expenses have doubled, and the cycle runs where every third year there is only one testing process going on, where the subsequent 2 years there's two, a promotional and a new hire.
Thank you.
Could you just highlight on that in terms from a timetable when that type of activity is projected in the first quarter, second quarter, and so forth?
The spring and summer months are spent for the establishment of either new police officer or new firefighter paramedic eligibility list, which lasts 2 years. So generally, we begin that process in March. So the end of the beginning of the spring, end of the winter, and it goes until July or August. And the promotional process for sergeants is at the end of the year, and then subsequently at the beginning or mid part of the following year, so 2012. In this case, there will be a similar promotional process for fire lieutenant. But consistently, the original entry lists expire in July, and so the process begins several months ahead of that on a consistent yearly basis.
Thank you. Trustee Bremen.
Yeah, and we need these lists, and we need the testing, regardless of whether or not we're intending to hire or not. Is that correct?
Absolutely,
yes. That's by statute?
It is. We always must have an active list in place, regardless of if we ever hire anyone off that list.
And that list is only good for
2 years, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
As Fire Chief, I'm pleased to present the fire department budget for calendar year 2011. As with, I think I can speak for all the other department heads as well, we can't do this without our staff, specifically my deputies, Seco and Pearson, and the rest of our staff contributed extremely to the success of this budget. The main strategic, by the way, it's page 83 to 85. The main strategic goal for 2011 is one of maintenance, as Mr. Bragg said earlier. We must maintain the high level of service to the residents of Buffalo Grove and the delivery of emergency services. We will continue to provide public education programs and events within the budgetary constraints to assist our residents in fire safety. We will work diligently in defining and improving our services through the analysis of services outlined in both the ISO evaluation and the International Association of Fire Chiefs accreditation process. Although we've attained an ISO Class 2 rating, the real work is in maintaining that rating for years to come for the betterment of the citizens of Buffalo Grove. We will also be using the accreditation guidelines to better evaluate and quantify our services so we can look for ways to define and refine the services we provide to the village. 2011 will be a very exciting year for the fire department. There'll be several people who will reach a pinnacle in their fire service career, 30 years of service. We will see a succession of personnel over this year. Some will retire and new personnel will fill their positions. This succession will be very challenging while being very exciting in the same time. We have a unique opportunity to shape the culture and direction of the next generation of firefighters. We will lose hundreds of years of experience and replace it with new faces and new perspectives and new ways of doing things. It's a time we will look for the new ways of doing things while maintaining the core mission of the fire department, which is commitment, loyalty, integrity, and pride. Succession planning will be also one of the challenges for us. The cost of training and outfitting a new firefighter must be accounted for, as well as the additional training of personnel as they move through the ranks and into new positions within the department. Much of the training will be done in-house, but it's a task we have to look at very closely and monitor the results. We have begun to prepare our existing personnel for some of the challenges they will face in the coming years. It is a process that may take several years and to fully complete. With all that training at all levels, we must continue to try and educate ourselves. The last but not least significant area to address in 2011 is response strategies. This process will be a statistical and practical study of what and where we need to respond to apparatus in the safest, most cost-effective manner. We will be continuing to work in conjunction with our neighbors on joint response patterns that will best serve our residents and our community. We will also be looking at current trends as well as best practices from around the area and the country to develop plans and procedures which will efficiently and effectively work for our department. Many of the best ideas will come from within our department. The men and women of the Buffalo Grove Fire Department have operated in a lean and efficient manner over the years. The staff has not changed in numbers, or has not increased staffing since 1991. Our structure and organization is designed efficiently and effectively to provide services to our community. We are a lean, we could be mean, but we're nice. The vision of the fire department can be reduced to the acronym SAFER: service, adaptability, fairness, empowerment, and respect. This vision, combined with our mission of commitment, loyalty, integrity, and pride, will be our guide to maintaining our commitment to excellence. I will entertain any questions that you have.
Any questions for the chief? Trustee Bregman.
It's not really a question of the chief. I guess this is a good place to ask about some of this other stuff as far as training. I know you talked about training, and as we talked before, 80% of our budget is employee salaries and benefits. Therefore, we have a very small area that we can really affect. Is what? Is personnel. Right. And I've got to tell you, I don't know enough to tell you what equipment you need and don't need. So I guess maybe the question is, what can we do to keep those costs that we can control, the equipment costs, the supplies, those type of things. What can we do, not only the fire department, but throughout the entire village? Is there economy of scale? Is there something we can do? Dane, I think you talked about it once before with us about purchasing powers and things like that. What can we do to reduce those as much as we can?
Well, I can tell you that as we did with the vehicles, we had tremendous abilities to look at economy in purchasing. There's also economy, as Mr. Bragg alluded to, with the consortiums, equipment and things of that nature. Most of the equipment that we purchase for our personnel is designed specifically for that individual person. It isn't inexpensive, because of the level of safety that we have to provide. There's not much that we can do.
If I could, another consideration that we'll be making for 2011 is the evaluation of a centralized purchasing program. The village does not currently have a centralized purchasing system. Each department is responsible for preparing its own bidding and purchasing its materials. I think we can leverage economies of scale. I think for our ability to ensure that we have consistent bidding practices, and those are defensible practices, that those need to be taken down or carried out through a centralized function. So that's another area we'll be looking at.
Thank you.
Trustee Trilling.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to commend you and everyone else in your department for the backup that's supplied this year. It was very informative. There was so many things that I always had questions about, but this was not the time or the place to necessarily ask them. And looking at this document or documents really provided the backup that I needed now to understand the full operation of your department relative to things such as, how much does it cost to do a dive team incident? How much does it cost to supply one firefighter with uniforms during his employment? All these factors, which gives us a very good breakdown and a full understanding of how we're equipping our department. And thank you for that information.
I'd like to take full credit for I came. It was in place when I started, and as I said, the two gentlemen behind me have done a lot of work behind me. Sorry.
It's very appreciated. Thank you.
Trustee Berman.
Thank you. Trustee Trilling, I still remember 2 chiefs ago when the chief stood up there and we didn't have this kind of detail and we didn't have this kind of information, and this board pretty well took a prior chief to task for that very issue, and it really, the department is to be commended. You heard what was set up here about a decade ago, and it is now truly, if not the most, one of the most comprehensive budgets that we see out of a department. It is, to use the word of the month, transparent and easily understandable. I also I'm sure that this is true in the other budgets, but I know that it really jumped out at me in yours, Chief, that, leaving aside the personnel costs, which are somewhat driven by other influences, almost every category of expense in your budget went down for this year. And I commend you and I commend the staff, and I know that sometimes you got to grit your teeth and it's tough to do to find that extra point or two to take the budget down, but it's quite clear to me that the fire department, and most of the, if not all of the departments, but this one, as I said, jumped out, really did work with a sharp pencil this year to help us meet the goals of keeping this budget a realistic budget in light of the times, and I do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I first want to, before I get involved in my formal presentation, I sincerely want to thank the board for being responsive and financially attentive to the police department needs over the many years, and I mean that with a sense of sincerity. I also think it's important to recognize the people at the Buffalo Police Department that participated in this budget process. It was more than just a few, and clearly the leadership, and what I refer to Deputy Chief Dunn is our Chief Financial Officer. He continues to do an outstanding job with his vision and insight, and once he's given direction, he brings us to that objective, and I want to thank Deputy Chief Dunn and the rest of my staff for doing an outstanding job. I'd like to refer to our Police Operation 2011 budget in pages 86 through 90, and I want to talk a little bit about our 2010 accomplishments. We received a total of 5 awards this year for traffic safety initiatives that were recognized at the state level. First place for our championship category, first place for our speed awareness category, and first place for our teen driving category. And I was happy to see that Trustee Trilling made the award presentation on the state level, and thank you, Trustee Trilling, for being there and supporting us. At the national level, we received our first place award in our size category and first place award for our bicycle pedestrian safety award. Based upon the traffic safety and education efforts of our officers and the support of the village traffic management team, we have experienced an 18% decrease in traffic crashes year-to-date versus 2009 crash totals. It's important to point out that the 2009 totals were at the lowest in 20 years. So to have that comparison really says a lot about the traffic safety programs in the village of Buffalo Grove. Our investigations unit arrested numerous individuals for drug violations, burglary of residence, and commercial burglaries, and we remain vigilant and aggressive with reported sexual offenses, especially involving our children. The recent arrest of 4 teenagers responsible for the arson and criminal damage to property of the Buffalo Grove Park District is an indicator of our investigation's success. In year 2010, we received 4 different grants. One was to support our canine program. The second one was an ILEAS equipment grant. We received 3 laptops for our squad cars. We received a grant from the Department of Justice for our bullet vest program. And finally, the Illinois Department of Transportation STEP program grant that supports our DUI and seatbelt enforcements. This year, we initiated a Care Track program to assist in locating individuals with special needs. Our crime prevention unit remains very active with our residents, our schools, the Buffalo Grove Park District, and our business community. We continue to have accounting safeguards in place, and I look at Trustee Brayman and Trustee Berman when I say this, in monitoring our overtime expenses and mandated court appearances, staffing obligations, training, and civic events. In fact, I would like to congratulate Deputy Chief Wagner, Commander Newton, and our sergeants in adjusting staffing schedules to reduce overtime costs for Buffalo Grove Days and our BG Arts Festival. And I also like to thank our court liaison officer, Bob Leake, who continues to monitor our court appearances and works very closely with both Lake County and Cook County to reduce our overtime obligations. For the 2011 goal highlights, we continue to seek grant funding to support staffing and various equipment and operational needs, and will always remain a high priority for this department in seeking out grants. During the first week of December, we will be going through our 6th reaccreditation process. We are confident, based upon years of preparation, that we will meet or exceed all mandated standards set forth by the National Commission on Accreditation. And this year, we're taking a look at 463 different standards. Our relationship with our disaster planning and response remains strong both on a local, state, and county level. As the second largest city municipality in Lake County, our commitment to mutual aid task forces is evident by our participation in the Lake County MEG Drug Unit, the Lake County Major Crimes Task Force, and the Major Crash Assistance Team. Currently serving the executive board for all 3 task forces, I can assure you that all 3 mutual aid programs have well-trained professionals that stand ready to respond to any and all high-profile, low-frequency events that might occur in the village of Buffalo Grove. We continue to remain as an active player both at a local, state, and county level to fight the war on drugs. We have participated in 4 drug forums in year 2009-2010 at the high school level. We will work closely with our state and federal agencies, reference any semblance of organized crime. Our school resource officers continue to provide drug and alcohol presentations at all grade levels. Over the past 10 years, our crime index rate has remained below the national average. In fact, something that I'm very proud of is our Part 1 index crimes, which deals with our serious crimes, has significantly decreased the past 3 years, which includes this current year. We are showing a 19% decrease in 2009 compared to 2008, and a decrease of 12% over the last 10 years. And you'll see on the presentation is the caption of the Part 1 index crimes that obviously deals with the most severe crimes that we deal with on a basis. In fact, I'm glad to report this morning that Sergeant Shaw has Googled best places to live and discovered that the U.S. average for violent crime, which is rated on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, the average is 4 for violent crimes, and the average is 4 for property crimes. The village of Buffalo Grove's ranking is 1, both for violent crimes and for property crimes. And I really want to thank the men and women of the Buffalo Grove Police Department for keeping this community safe. I think it's an outstanding accomplishment, and it'll be a goal for 2011. As far as challenges for 2011, there's 2 I'd like to address the board. The first one is we have modified our police social worker program based upon a recent resignation and based upon budget challenges. We will work closely with Omni Youth Services in our domestic violence program, and hopefully in the near future, we'll seek a full-time police social worker program. The second challenge that we have is based upon the recent resignation of Commander Mark Buccolo, which obviously leaves a void in our command structure. This void is important based upon the development of future leadership with this agency and our leadership succession plan. We stand ready not to fill an entry-level position in 2011 based upon the promotion of 1 sergeant and 1 commander. The total savings for this proposal exceeds $70,000. In our financial charts, our budget proposal shows a modest increase in personnel services and personnel benefits based upon the proposed 2% wage adjustment and increase in health cost. The increase in operating expenses is directly related to account 3216 for our maintenance contract. That's 3216. We have designated $40,000 for contractual services with Omni Youth Services related to our police social domestic violence program. We will experience a savings from a full-time position to a part-time position at about $45,000. Lastly, I think it's important to point out that we are projecting a decrease in all our commodity accounts by 17%, those that we have direct control over, and a projected decrease of 0.3% in our overall 2011 budget proposal. I would ask that I defer any questions to my 2 capable deputy chiefs because they have been very actively involved in this budget process, and I ask for consideration for approval for the amount of $9,707,159 in our proposed 2011 police operations budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Brayman.
Thank you. I can't believe it, Chief. For almost 20 years, I've been asking about this retainer fee, the $100 retainer fee. Why? And you finally got rid of it. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
I appreciate it. In the past, over the last several months, there's been questions raised about this board and prior boards, our concern for safety and drug issues. Are there any tools, any reasonable tools, other than your helicopter, any other tools that we haven't given you that would help in your efforts to fight crime, to fight drug use, et cetera?
You know, we've evaluated that question year after year on a monthly basis even, and we feel very confident based upon the resources that the board has provided us that we stand ready and willing to attack the issues. The biggest cooperative efforts that we need is to work really closely with our task force, especially with the Lake County Meg Unit, and also with our local, state, and federal agencies. And I think that we do that really well in terms of sharing information. So in answer to your question, sir, we're good. And we'll continue to explore other initiatives as we move forward. And if we do find a need for additional assistance in the area, believe me, I'll be knocking on your door.
I figured that. And you haven't been knocking lately, so I assume everything's been going well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Sussman.
In addition to alcohol and drugs, under drugs, are you including prescription drugs that are found in everyone's homes that children are starting to use or have been using for some time now?
Absolutely. At our last drug forum that was conducted at Stevenson High School, that was one of the issues that we talked about in terms of prescription drugs, because clearly that is the #1 concern out of all drugs, is the abuse of prescription drugs, and we're hitting that home hard, both at the high school level and at the grade school level.
Okay, that's what my concern was. Are we getting it out there so parents actually know that this is going on in their very own homes?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Just piggybacking that, I've got a couple questions. On this education, I applaud you for your involvement in these various programs on the drug enforcement and so forth and so on. I just wonder, is there anything else that you could recommend? One of the biggest problems is heightening awareness and educating the public. Is there anything more? And are there any other ideas that you've seen other communities utilize in terms of education? Because I think education and educating the community on this particular issue is one that probably is a critical component. Is there anything else that you think we could or should be doing in that arena?
Well, I think in terms of our target audience for that clearly is the individual students, working closely, obviously, with our schools and our partnerships with our law enforcement communities. We are looking at other additional initiatives as we speak, and again, if there is some type of initiative that we need some type of support, either financially or from the board, we will bring that to your attention immediately.
one other area that's probably not as, it's not a sexy topic, but one that, in light of our concerns about infrastructure and obviously maintaining our streets and roads, one that I just wonder about. I had some conversations with some other law enforcement officers recently, talked about truck enforcement and weight enforcement. And I'm not sure how pervasive if we have any problem in our community. I just from my own observation, I don't see a lot of large, trucks coming through our community. But on the other hand, I'm just wondering, is there anything what do we do in that area now? And is there something we should be doing more in terms of monitoring that type of activity because of its impact upon on our streets in terms of overweight trucks and things along those lines? Because obviously that has a long-term fiscal impact if we don't have good enforcement, and I'm not sure how significant the problem is.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's clearly an issue, and we have 4 or 5 officers that are strictly designated to overweight enforcement. In fact, one of our officers, and I'd like to congratulate him, Jim Harris, over the last 3 or 4 years, our enforcement in this particular area has increased twofold, and that also helps us from a financial basis in terms of dealing with the structure of our roadways. So it is an important issue to law enforcement, and I really believe that this police department has taken a very aggressive approach and will continue to take an aggressive approach in terms of our training and in terms of our enforcement on the streets. We are very visible in this area.
Thank you. Trustee Brayman.
Hearing some of the stuff that the Chief was talking about, maybe, Dane, maybe we can look at, I have a feeling we're going to have more time at meetings in the future, and maybe we could have some time from each of the departments on occasion, 5-10-minute presentation of what some of their programs are, because I don't think a lot of people understand, for instance, what MEG is and how we're involved in it, maybe the street program, how we do things. I think it'd be a good educational tool for us to use to educate the public as far as what our departments do and why they're paying the taxes, what they go for.
I think that's a tremendous idea, and I think Dane has actually even talked about the possibility of doing something like that. I think that if we could have every meeting a presentation of a short 5, 10, 15-minute presentation from one of our departments to educate our community as to what they're doing and giving, basically piggybacking on what you've done in the budget, which is, I think, is giving people an understanding. I think it's a great suggestion by Trustee Brayman.
Any other questions for my 2 deputy chiefs? Thank you very much for your support.
The building and zoning budget can be found on pages 91 through 94. President Hartstein, village trustees, in preparing the building and zoning budget, Brian and I kept our emphasis on keeping expenses to a minimum while not cutting any services to the community. We found our savings in 2 specific areas. One, the elimination of all capital equipment expenditures, which includes office furniture, office equipment, and all reserves of capital equipment and replacement, and all clothing allowances to our inspectional staff. Our budget, as proposed, is $1,010,611. There's an emphasis on continuing to support professional training for all our staff, some of which are required to attend classes to maintain their current licenses and certifications. All efforts are made to locate free or low-cost seminars that are featured throughout the Chicagoland area. In some cases, we've had staff training other staff members of our organization, many times, and that's related to computer issues. All of our training is in-state. Outside of our personal services and benefits, our largest expense is maintenance contracts, which covers the cost of Clark mosquito abatement. I'm going to swing back to 2010. Good, thank you. This year, we initiated our contractor registration program, which has been a huge success. As of today, we have registered 974 contractors for the calendar year 2010. One of probably the best aspects of this contractor registration program is the cooperation and the seriousness that we have shown our contractors that we definitely want all permits to continue from beginning to end, and more permits are being closed out than ever before. Cross-training program for our inspectional staff. We work with all of our inspectors and our plan examiner so that they can, within themselves, be cross-trained with one another so that in the effort of vacations, illness, et cetera, they can cover for one another. The new procedures to finalize the building permits in Buffalo Grove have also come with this contractor registration program. We've had a lot of success with our 2009 Energy Conservation Code, which actually works with part of our green energy that we're putting forth within the village. Some of the special events that we have done this year is the electronic recycling, document destruction, and the flu shot program. We hope to continue these and other programs like this next year. The important thing on this is there's no cost to the village outside of staff time. One of the other programs that we did this year, and Trustee Brayman alluded to it, we did our public service video on fences. This was done all in-house with the assistance of one of our arts commissioners who has experience in producing videos, and between our staff and his volunteer, we were able to get this on the channel, our village channel, and at no cost to the village whatsoever. So we hope to continue programs like this that will be successful, will get the messages across, but will be a little or no cost.
Good evening. I'm taking the second half here to talk about some of the initiatives for 2011. One of them up there would be some minor amendments to Title 15. There were some changes for some efficiencies in the code, and some changes for modifications to clarify some areas. And then there was also, Carol talked about the energy code. When that came forward, whether the state mandated it, there were some things that we have to modify within our Title 15 to accomplish that. The sign code, Title 14, you alluded to, we're making some modifications to that. I'm sure you're all aware. We're going to be bringing that forward to the Plan Commission, CBA, and then final village board for final approval. This year we'll also be welcoming our third certified fire prevention officer. Within the department, it's a cross-training effort that we have going on with the Fire Prevention Bureau, and we'll be moving forward with that and helping out where we can, and we really appreciate the effort that our staff has put forward in that program. The last two have to do with the new inspection database and basically streamlining our permit program. The database is something we put forward that sort of brings, with IT's help, it brings together our ability to pull information from our current permit database into our scheduling database so that we don't miss things. It makes it easier to do with no mistakes, and it's basically an ease of use thing. As different methodologies come forward to help streamline the permit process, we're always open to trying out new things, looking for ways to try and allow permits to come in online. I know that has been looked at in a number of cases, and it's just not conducive for bigger plants, but a lot of the smaller plants are able to take things in over the internet or through basically the website, and that way it really helps out. So at this point, Carolyn, I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
I just have a couple things. One thing that obviously in this economic climate, one of our goals obviously as part of the from an economic standpoint is economic development. And one of the concerns is cost and process, and cost is there's a lot of it. And what are the requirements and what is the process? Is there anything, and especially this is a time when we're not involved in, unfortunately, in some heavy building, unfortunately, in development at this point. And so maybe this is an opportunity to see if there are things that we could do that could be more, make Buffalo Grove even more attractive from a development standpoint. Is there anything that we can or should be doing that other communities are doing in terms of our overall process and in terms of requirements and so forth, making Buffalo Grove as business friendly as possible for attracting development? So this should be a place to be able, yes, this makes sense to develop in the village of Buffalo Grove. Are there things that we can or should consider doing, or is there things that you've read about that are being done in other communities that maybe we could be exploring during this downtime, so to speak, in terms of not having the heavy development at this point in time?
Well, one of the things we are looking for is the sign code. That is one thing that we're trying to expand and open up in certain areas where there are things coming forward with the digital signs and electronic signs. We've all seen that come forward. We're looking at the possibility of allowing certain things that haven't been allowed in the past, and those are looked at as being business friendly. We are open to any number of different ideas, but we really have to just research them. I'm not aware of any specifics other than what we're looking at the sign code currently.
President Hartstein, one of the things that we try to do is to make the permitting process for any developer as simplified as possible. We pride ourselves in quick plan review times. You had mentioned earlier doing things electronically. We get our reviews out as quickly as we can and send them off electronically so that the architect, the owner, be it the general contractor, whoever it is, has them as quickly as possible. And many of I know one of our recent developers had stopped Brian and talked about what a wonderful procedure this has been in his experience in Buffalo Grove. And it's just one of the smoothest procedures that he's ever had in building a development.
Thank you. Two other areas I just urge you to maybe look at in terms of evaluating what we could or should have on the books. One of the things that I envision, especially in light of our economic situation, is I think we're going to be seeing, as experienced in many other communities, more teardowns, because basically, in some, especially on our older part of our community, we've experienced it, but not necessarily on the magnitude of some other communities. And do we have things in place on our books to properly and effectively deal with that particular situation, and are things that we should be doing? And the other, which is obvious we've talked about before, is whether we should or should not, and I'd look for recommendations from staff as whether we should be revisiting anything we should be doing on our, obviously we get variances all the time, and we have this whole issue about the fences, and it comes from time to time in terms of being user-friendly to our residents. Is there something we should be revisiting? Would you evaluate and recommend whether we should or should not do anything different with our fence ordinance? Because obviously that's an issue that comes up time and again, just from a standpoint of a day-to-day issue that affects our residents.
I'll take the demolition. I'll let Brian talk about the fences. One of the things that we do when it comes down to tear downs is that we do have our team, our architectural review team. So not only would they look at the total elements of how this building will look in compared to the other aspects of the community, but we also do that for additions and any major remodelings that are done. So we are watching to make sure that it flows.
Are there any code changes or recommendations that we should be talking about having on the books to deal with that type of situation?
I'm not aware of anything. It seems to be going smoothly. We haven't had any problems that I'm aware of.
That's more of a zoning issue also. That's something that I've discussed with our village planner over time. And if there's something that we do need to address, we'll be happy to look at it. And I'll discuss.
I think both departments need to work on that together, obviously.
And as far as the fencing, I am actually preparing a report that Trustee Trilling had requested that when we had our last 6-foot fence that came forward, which I'll be seeing a couple more. But yeah, that'll be something we'll probably provide a recommendation again going forward.
Thank you very much. Trustee Trilling.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Bless you. First of all, Carol, it's good to have your voice starting to come back so we can hear you.
Yeah, each day it gets a little better. Thank you.
Okay. Second thing is I look at the budget and over 90% of our expenses are really, personnel-related expenses. You really don't have much of an operating budget per se out of building and zoning. The questions I had relative to the elevator consultant fees and other consultant fees, I'm assuming that these costs, if you will, even though they show them as an expense here, they are recouped in some way, an inspection process from the owner of the building, correct?
That is true. It is what we would consider almost like a pass-through account. Thompson bills us. We do issue permits or issue permits for new elevators or elevators that are being repaired. We have our, twice annually, all the elevators in the community are inspected, and there is a fee for that. We do charge more than, of course, what Thompson charges us, so it is revenue generating.
Okay, so we're recouping our expenses at least.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then also relative to consultant fees, I noticed that there's 3 line items where we've allocated $1. I assume it's a placeholder of some sort because I can't imagine something actually. I'm sorry?
Basically, those are pass-through accounts. It's just a placeholder.
Right, okay, that's what I assumed. And my last question is that I'm assuming that our inspection teams, if you will be properly attired even though we've eliminated the clothing allowance for next year?
They do have their guidelines as to what they are to wear, and so far we haven't heard any complaints. If you can just check in the budget this year, we had the money allocated and we did not spend it this year, and next year we're taking it out of the budget completely. We're very proud to have a very professional inspectional team. They certainly understand the challenges that the village faces, and I have not heard one complaint from them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Berman.
Thank you, Carol. I hate to keep asking you to talk, but you did highlight the Clark Mosquito contract as one of the critical elements of your budget, and it is noted that will require village board approval before it goes into effect. Has your office evaluated on an ongoing basis the scope, nature, type of services we're receiving from Clark?
If you wouldn't mind, I would defer that to Brian, because Brian is the one who negotiates with them.
I'll say care of the voice. Yeah, we do look at that. Right now, I think we're on the second year of a 3-year contract that we had approved 2 years ago. And we do evaluate that there is a new player, if you will, in the arena. Lately, I'm going to be pulling some additional information from them, trying to find out some of the communities they service and determine if they can meet our obligations, and we'll go forward with an RFP next year.
Great, thank you. And then just a gentle reminder, Mr. President, this is a budget meeting, and I would encourage you to focus your questions on the budget.
Trustee Bremen.
Thank you. Dane, you mentioned before about trying to find economies of using either going out of the village for services or et cetera. This is a good area possibly. I know we talked about building inspections, but maybe the health inspections. I do know that some communities around, I believe Northbrook, contracts their health inspections out to another village. Maybe is that something we can do, either sending ours out to somebody else or having somebody else come to us and increasing our revenue to offset our expenses. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you.
I'm pleased to talk about the Public Works budgets and the village budget submittal. Public Works is composed of 9 operating account groups, and they are on pages 95 through 148. They include the Public Works Administration, Building Maintenance, Engineering Division, Street Operations, Forestry and Grounds, Central Garage, Drainage, Water Operations, and Sewer Operations. In 2010, our accomplishments that we've identified as some of our more significant, of course, is the Village-Wide Drainage Improvement Project, which the Village Board authorized after an extended study and detailed public input, and it's just gone really well, and we're very pleased with the successful completion of that project, which is wrapping up to a final few punch list items now. Last year, we were successful in gaining ARRA funding for 2 street segments, Main Street and Old Checker Road renovation. And that street renovation construction, along with the regularly budgeted street maintenance construction, has been successfully completed this past year. The Lake Hook Road water main replacement under Buffalo Creek is now being constructed, and this is the result of a unanticipated emergency situation where the water main broke underneath the creek, and we had to shut it off for a period of time, and quickly were able to move ahead with the board's authorization to accommodate this water main replacement to reestablish the intended grid system in that area. And another project which we're very pleased with is the Indian Creek Stream Bank Stabilization Project. In this case, we've successfully obtained 319 environmental improvement grants and also Lake County Stormwater Management Agency watershed management grant assistance to fund the project. And we utilize the grant funds that essentially cover the cost of specialty environmental designers and materials. And then with in-house labor and equipment, we've met the village match without an actual out-of-pocket expenditure to accomplish the improvement. And I was over today with the environmental designer, and it really is a very nice, wonderful project, which we'll probably submit for various award recommendation or considerations in the upcoming year. And Reservoir 7, the Cell 5 roof repair, was completed following the village board's authorization of the bidding and the contract award. And that project proceeded very nicely and is now complete. The highlighting of the goals for 2011, the items that are probably the primary types of things, and of course we have a very large number of things we do operationally every day of a recurrent nature, but sort of the larger goals are those that are more of a capital nature that stand out perhaps more uniquely from the other things we do routinely. So next year, we're looking to see the Well 7 construction be authorized for bidding and constructed. And we have done design on the renovation of 2 lift stations, the OTP Old Treatment Plant across the street here and Cambridge on the Lake, which is in Cambridge on the Lake development south of Dundee Road. And we're hoping to get those permitted and bid and built. Unfortunately, we had a failure at the Cambridge on the Lake lift station, and I know there's a category in the budget of challenges, and one I might have omitted from noting is that we are having a bit of a challenge right now related to the MWRD permitting process. I know Village Manager Dane Bragg has provided some reports that I've been copied on of some of the efforts, and the Northwest Municipal Conference's a number of other communities are also experiencing some difficulties with that. So unfortunately, we haven't gotten the permit for that, but we just have essentially a catastrophic failure that requires us to move ahead with that renovation in any case. The Dundee Road Bikeway and Pedestrian Improvement Project was authorized by the board for the public information meeting next month, and that's we're preparing for that and chatting with people. We've sent out notices up and down the corridor and conversing with different people who are interested in it. And I know a number of people that are planning to come to the meeting and provide additional input as we hope to then move ahead to the design and construction in 2011. The Arlington Heights Road water main is, of course, sort of the last remaining water main reinforcement project that was left over from the original 1980s comprehensive water study, because the engineers came out with the recommendation to build that water main just about the time they were curing the concrete on the new Arlington Heights Road, and there was no other place to put that water main, and we kind of put it off. We haven't had any significant problem, but there are theoretical occurrences of significant fires that water main would be very beneficial to have in place. All of our ISO testing has been quite adequate for that purpose, but there is a continuing identified theoretical need for that reinforcement, and with the reconstruction of Arlington Heights Road now, I understand they just opened bids last week for that, including our water main project, and we'll be bringing shortly to the village board the intergovernmental agreement that's involved with the payback to the county for their construction of the main. We haven't seen the bid tabulations yet, but we're very optimistic that we'll see a very competitive bid process in that project. As we had also, of course, last year when we had the village-wide drainage improvement, we had a highly competitive and very successful pricing of that as a result of the bidding climate. This upcoming year, the Northwest Water Commission has done some preliminary designs, studies, and has authorized currently ongoing design of some system improvements here in Buffalo Grove. One of the elements of their system improvements will provide for a transmission main extension from our receiving reservoir number 2 on Arlington Heights Road to reservoir 7 on just south of Aptekissick Road by Buffalo Grove Road, which will give them the ability in a case, they did have a case that they had a shutdown of the west feed on one occasion. Though we were not able to feed 2 of the reservoir receiving points, we have a lot of redundancy and off periods, and we got by fine, but this type of thing would allow them to backfeed from the easterly leg to two westerly most points if a break of that nature were to reoccur again today, as it had once before in Arlington Heights. And a number of other improvements that are throughout their system will occur with that. And construction of the water pump house and reservoir rehabilitation improvements has been designed, and we're still waiting. Now we're waiting for IEPA permitting finalization, and that involves a large number of some relatively minor, some a little bit more major renovations that are needed in the various pump houses. A lot of those were identified a couple of years ago in our, I think it was our 2008 comprehensive water study, and now we've kind of progressed that along to the implementation stage to address a number of those miscellaneous rusted out door issues and sort of deteriorated retaining walls around some of the perimeters of the buildings, in addition to some security improvements that were recommended by the mandated security evaluations that the federal government had provided for a couple of years ago. So those are the highlights, and the tabulation of the corporate fund portion of the budget is denoted in this slide here with a total of those operating accounts of $5,884,334. And with that, if there's any questions, Village Engineer Dick Kinkler, Deputy Public Works Director Rick Cool, and our Technical Service Rep Brett Robinson, who have compiled various budgets, are available to assist in any question answering that there may be.
I have 2 questions. One, in light of this problem we recently experienced at the Cambridge lift station, obviously it's an unexpected situation. Are we aware of, or what do we do in terms of evaluation to basically, on an ongoing basis, so that we can project based upon age of infrastructure and so forth, maybe we avoiding some unexpected problem like that down the line? What do we do in terms of that? And is there something that we can be doing to better project?
That lift station, and it was identified by our staff as that this is a station we should probably try to address. It's just older. We know that there's a number of reasons to be concerned about it. And so one of the things we did in preparation of the plans is we had a specialty consultant do an evaluation of the lift stations. So they kind of did a comprehensive evaluation of the entire station. This is somewhat similar to what we had done on the Linden Avenue lift station several years ago. In that case, and every case is somewhat different. The Linden, a critical aspect of that evaluation had to do with recently adjusted 100-year flood elevations that caused us to think about a lot of things about the fundamental setting of the elevation of the lift station, and it was a more major remodeling where we completely constructed a new pumping facility. In this case, we didn't feel a need for those kind of things, but it was just felt to be highly recommended to try to bring the electrical gear out of the dry well and bring it up to the top. Unfortunately, we couldn't get our permit. All the electrical gear was in the exact place we were thinking it would be better if it wasn't, and there was a flooding of the station. All the electrical gear was lost, so it required us to put in this temporary pumping. So, but that process of a detailed evaluation of the station by a specialty consultant in consultation with our own operating staff is the basic process for these lift stations. We would like to move ahead. We have other stations that we want to move ahead with, including the Ropp lift station, the Golfview station, and the Camelot station. All have issues at the next tier of priority, but there's a number of these that we'd like to move ahead with.
The other question is, one of the things we experienced in the last couple of years was the spike in the cost for salt and so forth in terms of our snow removal and so forth. Do you anticipate, or based upon any projections, any potential areas for spikes in material costs which could have a severe impact on the budget?
I'll defer that to Rick, who's monitored that most closely.
No, not at this time. The biggest problem we're finding is that due to the lack of some of the roads that are not getting resurfaced and stuff like that, we're finding more patching that we need to do. And we need more materials, not necessarily the cost of it, but just the amount that we need is going up.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Trustee Trilling.
One question related to the central garage. Obviously, we don't have anything in the budget to improve the central garage, like for capital expenditures, like we would have liked to. We know that there's a great need for space right now, and it's at a premium. The one thing that we did implement this year, which I don't recall it being actually in the budget, so my question is really related to, is it in the 2011 budget now, as far as the CO NO2 detection system?
I believe that we anticipate completing that within the current fiscal year based on a previous authorization of the board to proceed. So we're, I believe that's proceeding on that basis now.
Okay, so it would be coming out of the 2010 budget, even though it wasn't necessarily a budgeted item. That's what I was getting at. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Beginning on page 124, deals with the emergency management agencies. Budget, emergency management agency continues to maintain our focus on communication. Our major projects for the year will be the replacement of our mobile communication center and enhancements to our emergency operations center. The major funding sources for us for this year will actually be an ILEAS grant that I discussed at our last meeting. So therefore, that will be our major funding source. Most of the labor for this agency is provided by volunteers. Volunteers are available at 24 hours a day, available for any of the operating departments should there be a major problem. That's basically the focus of my budget for this year, and I've opened it up to any questions.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
The final budget within the corporate fund begins on page 128, and that's Department 481, which is transfer non-operating. These essentially are transfers of a non-operating nature of either current revenues or prior period fund balances transferring out of corporate fund to other operating funds. The budget for fiscal year 2011 is $5,147,214. Of that total, $384,743 will be transferred for capital project improvements. $548,317 will be transferred to the motor fuel tax, and that essentially represents 20% of our home rule sales tax. $104,143 will be sent to the golf funds as an operating subsidy, and $4,095,011 will be transferred to the public safety pensions. That's essentially a pass-through. We account for the revenue within the corporate fund as well, so it's just a transfer out to the pension funds. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Bremen.
Scott, I want to confirm the fact that even though an item is in the capital improvement plan, and even though it's in this budget, that doesn't mean it's been approved and we're going to go forward. Each and every capital improvement item has to be taken up separately and proven on its own. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is just another step in the process.
Thank you.
And that would conclude the corporate fund.
Are there any other questions of staff on the corporate fund?
Any questions from anyone at this time?
Okay, with that, we will move into golf next. Scott Anderson and Carmen Mullenhour will present on that.
Just as a brief segue, beginning on page 149 starts the golf enterprise. The total revenue anticipated to be earned at both the Buffalo Grove and the Arboretum golf courses is $2,473,204, offset by $2,582,347 for an operating deficit of $104,193. $143. We have, as I just mentioned, within transferring not operating fund, set up a contingency to make that transfer to the golf course. If needed, we will make that evaluation at the December 31st, 2011, if a transfer is required. That being said, I'd like to turn it over to Carmen.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening to the board. Good to see everyone again tonight. Needless to say, 2010 was a most challenging year for the golf department. There were, however, some highlights that I would like to let the board know. First of all, we did manage to bring the expense budget in at about 10%, with a 10% savings over the approved budget amounts from 2010. We were able to maintain all service levels and course conditions while using lower seasonal and part-time salaries than budgeted. In the two near normal weather months that we had in 2010, April and October, we did record near record levels of play load at both facilities, which was encouraging to see. We did the completion of the cell tower project, which will provide additional revenue sources for the golf department for many years to come. Starting out in 2000, we actually made some money in 2010, which we didn't anticipate because the project got completed a little bit ahead of schedule. But starting in 2011, we will receive a minimum of $24,000 a year with a 3% escalator clause, and that's providing we don't even have any hop-ons, which we hope we will get some additional users on that tower. And finally, we did continue to provide recreational resources for over 70,000 rounds of golf between the two golf courses combined, while still providing flood relief for both facilities for the nearby communities at both golf courses. Unfortunately, we had to use those resources quite a few times this year, but it is a resource that we do provide to the residents, and we're happy to do so. Unfortunately, it does cost us some money when that does happen. Some of the 2011 projected goals, we are hoping for and providing for a bounce back in rounds. We anticipate 4 areas which we're hoping those bounce backs occur. First of all, a slight improvement in the general economic forecast for people and industries in general. More innovative and aggressive marketing plan, which we will talk about a little bit later. General rate reduction at the Arboretum, which we think will reposition us in a better spot with our competitors, and also build upon the solid core of regular players that we have at Arboretum. And finally, hopefully a return to a near normal weather condition for the golf season, which would be something new we haven't experienced in the last 3 or 4 years. And finally, with a healthy enough revenue stream, we would like to get our project completions back on track. We've deferred most projects the last couple of years just due to revenue restraints. So we're hoping with a healthy revenue flow, we'll start to get back to some of those project completions, which we haven't been able to do the last couple of years. Some of the major challenges that we think we're going to face in 2011. Number one, even though we think it's going to be an improving economy, we think it's going to be a slow improvement. It's still kind of a sluggish economy, which will also affect the amount of disposable income that people have to play golf and do other sporting recreational activities. Continued discounting from our local competitors of their golf rates. This is a tremendous pressure that the whole industry is kind of under. It's you can open up the paper and go on the internet, and there's all kinds of discounting going on in the golf industry right now, and that's a tremendous pressure that we have to deal with. Continued oversupply of golf courses for the current demand that we have. And finally, the continued, or really the story behind Hillcrest Country Club in Long Grove, which at the moment is closed and under receivership, and if that happens to reopen, it's a public facility, we will have tremendous increase in competition right in our own backyard. So that's something that we're monitoring very closely, and hopefully it's going to reopen as a private facility or stay just grown over for a while right now. But if that does open, and I heard some rumors that it might open as a public facility, that will just slice up the pie a little bit more in this, directly in our backyard. So those are some of the challenges that we anticipate for 2011. As reported in the budget document and also the business and marketing document that was distributed earlier at Buffalo Grove, we do plan on holding the daily and the pass rates at Buffalo Grove Golf Club for 2011. We think we're in a real strong position as far as our competitors. Buffalo Grove remains one of the golf courses in Illinois that plays more rounds than almost any golf facility in the state. And even in a soft year with bad weather, we're going to play probably close to 48,000 rounds of golf at Buffalo Grove. So we think by maintaining our rates, by keeping the rate structure the same as it is, it keeps us one of the great golf values per dollar in the north and northwest suburbs. And we also think it rewards our large and loyal core of customers with fantastic values. At Arboretum, you may have noticed we are proposing a slight overall rate reduction in both the daily rates and the pass rates. We feel this reduction will reposition the Arboretum in a much stronger position in relationship to its competitors in the area. We also think that this rate reduction will help reward and keep us growing in our loyal core of customers. One of the things that we need to be mindful of is that at Buffalo Grove, we've had 35 years to build that core of customers at Buffalo Grove Golf Club, where at Arboretum, we're still in the infancy. I kind of start the clock on the day we open the new clubhouse at Arboretum. So we've only had 7 or 8 years to build that solid core of loyal customers that'll stay with us through good times and bad. And I think the rate reduction will help grow that solid core, and it'll help protect the solid core that we have with us right now. As far as the marketing plans for 2011, we will continue to utilize the village newsletter, the golf course websites, both the Rosemont and the Schaumburg Consumer Golf Shows. We will continue e-marketing with great reach fees, and also do some additional print ads with the local outlets and golf magazines. In addition, we will be aggressively pursuing some new avenues, some new ways of marketing, including text messaging, emailing, and direct mailing programs. These are all areas that we're just getting involved with now, just getting information on, but I think it's going to provide us a tremendous opportunity to market the golf courses on days when we only want to market it, so that if we don't have to throw out a blanket coupon. If we have a day or 2 days that we know are going to really be slow, we can instantly send out a text message or an email and promote those 2 days, not throw that out there for the whole month where we're living with a coupon or a discounted rate for the eternity. We also are going to implement a reward program for our frequent players, a new program we've been talking about, and also revamping our value pack program, coming up with a new idea in that department. So there are some exciting things that we're trying to do with our marketing plan. Both my staffs we've been having a lot of meetings, doing a lot of brainstorming, and we've come up with some great ideas, I think, to move forward. In closing, I'd like to say that myself and my staff are determined to make 2011 a more positive season, and we're committed and determined to do whatever it takes to make that happen. The total golf enterprise budget request for 2011 is $2,582,347. That represents a 4.6 decrease from our request for 2010. And with that, I will answer any questions you have.
I just want to ask a question that I know a lot of people ask from time to time. We have 2 golf courses, and the question comes up, why 2 golf courses? And in terms of, and I think it's important for people who aren't familiar, maybe that you could explain better from a sustainability standpoint what these 2 courses serve, the markets, the differential in markets they serve, so people really have sort of a bird's eye view of that, because I think that's a question that comes up in the minds of people who aren't familiar with the courses or aren't familiar with golf, and the fact that we have 2 golf courses in our community. Just a question that maybe you can expand upon in a brief way to give people some understanding.
Sure. Well, in 1973, the village had the opportunity to contract for the purchase of Buffalo Grove Golf Club from a private owner at that time. The purchase price was $1.1 million, which at that time might have seemed a little steep, but right now seems like the bargain of the century. We have over the years had tremendous success at Buffalo Grove. During the late 70s, early 80s, we were playing as many as 59,000 rounds of golf. There was a tremendous shortage of golf courses at that time. And there weren't too many municipalities or park districts that were in the golf business. Buffalo Grove was kind of one of the pioneers to get into the golf business at that time. Buffalo Grove continues to be one of the leaders as far as number of rounds played. It offers a tremendous recreational opportunity for seniors, ladies, leagues, players really of all calibers. It's kind of an old-fashioned municipal type golf course. And it also, as a secondary responsibility, provides tremendous flood control for the area around Buffalo Grove Golf Club. About 20 years ago, Buffalo Grove was offered the opportunity to enter into a contract to obtain or actually build Arboretum Golf Club. That contract with Zale developers at the time provided the property and the design fee at no cost to the village of Buffalo Grove. We paid the construction fees. Zale donated the property to the village and also paid for the design fee. At that time, there was still a relative shortage of golf courses. We thought it was a tremendous opportunity to have a golf course at the south end of the village, Buffalo Grove, and also a golf course at the north end of the village, up at Route 22. We didn't want to build the same type of golf course. We thought we'd build a premium type facility so that we weren't really splitting the market at Buffalo Grove. We would be developing two separate markets. The market we had already captured at Buffalo Grove and the market that we hoped to capture at Arboretum, which was a premium facility, followed 10 years later by a premium clubhouse, which certainly added to the excitement up at Arboretum. In recent days, I mean, between golf courses being built and the lack of growth in the industry, the projections that we had first thought in Arboretum have not really held true. We're holding our own, but we're not growing as fast as we had hoped. We do see that that's going to turn around eventually. Courses are closing. The market continues to grow as far as numbers of golfers, just not as quick as we had hoped. So that's really kind of if I could give you the 5-minute background on how we ended up with 2 golf courses in Buffalo Grove. But we saw it as a tremendous opportunity to have over 225 acres of open space at the command of the village board and the residents that can't be developed, that can't be changed. And we think that it's a tremendous asset. If you never play a round of golf at all and you live in Buffalo Grove, we view it as a tremendous asset to every homeowner, every business in Buffalo Grove. And I think in small part, it's one of the reasons that Buffalo Grove is always chosen as one of the best suburbs that you would want to live in. Certainly the recreational value that not only the golf courses provide, but the park district and the schools and everything. So it's part of the complete package.
Thank you very much. Trustee Sussman.
Carmen, has the golf market done poorly in other places and not just Buffalo Grove?
It's nationwide. The industry is down as a whole. I think most recreational activities are down as a whole. I would say Buffalo Grove is probably doing better than most of the other areas in the country. Arboretum's probably right on pace with everyone else. It's just a tough market right now, but we do see it as bottoming out. We do see some opportunities to do some additional marketing to try to grow those rounds back up. So yeah, it's not us, it's everyone.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Carmen.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to the Water Fund, beginning on page 133. The Water Fund is the largest enterprise fund operated by the village. For fiscal year 2011, the revenue budget is $9,304,458. 98% of the revenue is generated through meter sales of water to the community. The remainder of the revenue is generated through developer fees, and interest income. The village currently charges $3 per 1,000 gallons of water, and there's no changes to that rate proposed for the next fiscal year. For this revenue estimate, there's an assumption that 1.44 billion gallons of water will be metered during the year. This is about 3% less than the 10-year average. We really have seen the consumption of water drop off the table since 2007. A lot of it, what Carmen alluded to, is a significant amount of rain and cool summers impacted his business as well as the water enterprise. We're not getting those long dry spells where people use water for irrigation and landscape purposes. We've seen the usage of water drop about 15% over that 3-year span. A lot of it also, besides weather, is there's economic reasons, obviously, for trying to conserve water, and just the actual conservation efforts themselves have actually proved to be a positive within the villages. People are being a bit more economical as far as their landscape plantings and doing prairie-type plantings and those things that are a bit more drought-resistant. There will be an operating deficit programmed within the budget, given this current rate. This is something that we'll have to look forward in the next year, taking a look at our rate structure and taking a look at not only what we need to function today or over the next year, but take a look at some of the infrastructure needs and long-term maintenance and capital type issues. But that'll be an ongoing process, and we'll report at some point during the year of what the fund will look like over the next 10 years. 48% of all the revenue earned within the water fund will be allocated for Lake County sanitary sewer fees. The village really offers a partnership service with Lake County Public Works to bill on their behalf for Lake County sanitary sewer. We essentially, for every dollar we collect, we remit right back to Lake County Public Works. We provide the benefit, again, in the billing to try and keep costs down. We don't have any say over the fee charged by Lake County Public Works. Right now, it currently sits at $4 per 1,000 of gallons treated. Those Cook County residents, they're paying for their sanitary sewer within their property tax assessments. The only recommendation we would make on the revenue side is to change the way we bill for sanitary sewer charges through our residential district. We currently charge on a flat fee, making the assumption that every household will use 7,500 gallons a month. That's held true for about 20 years now, but we're starting to slide off that number. We think it's more equitable at this point to charge on a consumption basis. Also, that will play into the conservation efforts. Is now essentially, you control for the most part what you will pay in sanitary sewer services. And for those that are billed, all the residential are billed on a bi-monthly period. Any usage less than 15,000, they'll actually see a savings. Conversely, anything over 15, they'll see a little bit more in their sanitary sewer charges. But again, the revenue projected for 2011 is $9,304,458, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the revenue.
I just wanted to say that I'd just like to applaud staff for being able to work this through in terms of trying to deal with the changing from the flat fee to the consumption-based. I think that's being responsive to comments we've heard from the community and so forth, and I think it's a more equitable situation, and I think this is a situation where the people have spoken and the village has listened and realized that this is a more equitable way and basically gives people control themselves of what they use and what they don't use based upon the consumption situation. And it's not an arbitrary situation where we're using the flat fee. So I applaud staff for being responsive and incorporating that as part of the budget. Trustee Brayman.
Thank you, Scott. Really, the difference in the budget from last year, this year, the increase really has to do with the pump house, pump house number 7, and the water main, the capital improvements, correct?
On the expense side, yes. There's I think $3.3 million in capital expenditures that Greg had provided great detail on those projects that's driving the expense.
Thank you.
In total, the expense for both the water and sanitary sewer will be $13,019,805. As previously noted with Lake County Public Works, we'll be sending about 34% of that budget to Lake County Public Works based on that pass-through revenue. $1.8 million will be paid to the Water Commission for the purchase of Lake Michigan water through a contractual agreement with the City of Evanston. And again, 26% of the budget is devoted to capital improvements and projects. There will be a $700,000 transfer to the corporate fund, which is essentially an overhead chargeback for services provided on behalf of the water fund by other operating departments. And for abatement purposes, there'll be $180,000 transferred out of the water fund to the debt service fund to essentially pay for their portion of what was an earlier bond issue for an expansion within the public service center, and that portion is allocated to water services. Again, the total budget, $13,019,805. Further allocated, the water system is composed of $7,538,680, and the sewer system is $5,481,125. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Trustee Sussman.
On page 138, I had a question under capital projects water. For fiscal year 2010, it was $2,703,000. For the estimated actual, it's $869,000 plus. And then for 2011, we're raising it, even though it was $2,700,000 and we only spent $869,000. Now we're raising it to $3,446,000. I was wondering why.
Additional capital projects, in terms of those that we didn't complete in 2010, those carry over. Then we had some other projects with some security improvements with some pump stations and some of the lift station repairs. So we actually added some capital projects to what was still carrying over from fiscal year 2010.
I think the important thing I think maybe you need to explain further is that these projects which are being done that are water related are being paid for out of this fund. We're not dipping into taxes or other sources. This is basically based upon this fund that has this money available to try, which been prudently invested and so forth, so that we can deal with these needs as they arise. So this is self-finance, so to speak, in terms of those water improvements.
That's correct, all cash finance, prior period reserves.
Any other questions? Thank you.
That concludes the presentation on the enterprise funds. What we have remaining are the special revenue and fiduciary funds, and I will try and do the lightning round with these. If I go too fast, please let me know. The first fund is IMRF. Revenue is $1,547,772. This represents property tax revenues. They're essentially levied for the purposes of paying for the employer portion of IMRF, FICA, and Medicare. The expense budget is $1,571,462, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Moving forward to page 171, starts the budget for the parking lot fund. Essentially, this fund accounts for all revenues and expenditures related to the operation of the Metro Depot and the related parking facilities. Total revenue is expected within 2011 to be $147,100. This revenue consists of rent payments from the coffee concessionaire within the depot, also a daily fee charge of $1.75. Also, we offer a bi-monthly parking pass at a reduced rate of $50 per 2 months. Total expenditures are $183,221. The biggest cost within the parking lot fund is for the land lease with ComEd. We currently pay, we're scheduled to pay next year $109,535. We were given a rebate back last year based on our usage when Metro came in and built the additional 400 or 500 spaces. We've made a plea to ComEd that we're not utilizing all the space. We'll make the same plea again this year, but it's on a year-by-year basis. So we're hoping to get some type of rent mitigation or lease mitigation with ComEd. But as it stands now, the fund will be about $30,000 in deficit. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the parking lot.
Thank you.
Moving forward to page 175, begins the motor fuel tax funds. The revenues are anticipated to be $1,841,741. Of that amount, $1.1 million are distributions from the state of Illinois. The remaining $500,000 are those dollars transferred out of the corporate fund, that being the 20% of the home rule sales tax that we allocate to our annual street program. Also, we're due to receive another $187,000 from the Illinois Jobs Now capital grant, which will be allocated towards the street program. Total expenditures for 2011 are $1,750,000. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Moving forward to page 179, actually 179 through 186 is a listing of both of our capital project funds, one for facilities, one for streets. These are all the projects that were included within the CIP that was presented on November 1st. These are all the first-year projects that we've moved forward into the budget. And again, these projects are, although approved within the CIP, will be included within the budget, but again, there'll be another process to bring those before the board. The first fund is the facilities fund. Total revenue is anticipated to be $875,212. This revenue consists of a transfer from the corporate fund of prior period reserves of $384,743. An additional $490,469 will be sent in as a capital grant reimbursement for the Dundee Road streetscape improvement. Total expenditures are anticipated to be $875,212. Included within that capital expense will be improvements to the parking lot, the Dundee Road streetscape improvement, the previously mentioned bridge reconstruction, the financial system upgrade, and raising the apparatus bay doors on Station 26. Any questions on facilities?
Thank you.
The capital project street budget begins on 183. Total revenue is anticipated to be $245,908, and this consists of a Cook County Highway project reimbursement for the Wyland Road study. Total expenditures are estimated to be $1,271,215. This would include several projects, including the Wyland Road corridor study, along with some final payments for projects that have been completed actually several years ago, but Route 22 and the Aptic Road Signal Deerfield Parkway payment. Again, we're using prior period debt issuance money to fund what essentially looks to be a deficit. So this will essentially use up the rest of the debt service money. We'll essentially wrap it up within the end of fiscal year 2011. Any questions?
Thank you.
Next fund starts 187. This is the village's debt service fund. The revenue to be accounted for within 2011 represents our property tax levy for our debt service. Total revenue is expected to be $1,292,929. Those proceeds will be utilized to pay the principal and interest payments on bond issuances 2002B, 2003, 2010A and B. The principal and interest due in 2011 is $1,301,833. Any questions? Beginning on page 191 and proceeding through 197 are the two public service or public safety pension plans. The first plan is the police pension fund. That total revenue is anticipated to be $4,060,777. Of that total, $53,000 is employer contributions that collected via the tax levy. That amount is determined by the village's independent actuary. Of the remainder of the revenue, 32% of that revenue will be through interest income, and 15% will be through employee contributions. Listed on page 194 are the expenses. Currently in the fund, we have 25 retirees, 2 disability pensions, and 2 survivor pensions. The estimated expense for the fund is $1,766,120. Included in that total is $113,000 for investment and legal fees paid for by the fund. And that concludes police pension. Fire pension begins on 195. The total revenue is budgeted at $3,545,915. Of that total, 55% will be funded through the tax levy, again by an amount calculated by the independent actuary. 30% will be generated through investments, and the remaining 15% will be through employee contributions. Expenses are listed on page 198. The census of the fire pension funds is 6 retirees, 3 disability pensions, and 2 survivor pensions, with the likelihood that we'll gain another 5 to 7, 8 more retirees next year within the fire pension fund. Total expenses are anticipated to be $857,815, of which almost $95,000 of that will be allocated for investment and legal fees. And that concludes fire pension.
Trustee Berman.
Thank you, Scott. You know, we talked earlier about the early separation incentive that is at least theoretically planned for the coming year. Have we taken that into account in planning for the cost of the 2 pension plans?
It is factored in what the pension payouts will be. It's not factored in any of the levy calculation.
But you are planning, at least in terms of what the expenses
From actual dollar
will
expense,
be.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the final fund is the refuse fund, beginning on page 199. Essentially, this fund accounts for the flat fee charged by Waste Management to refuse customers. It's a tipping fee charged on a different rate from single family to multifamily. We essentially collect that and remit that to SWANK. It's essentially a pass-through revenue, and that's for payments for the use of the transfer station. The total revenue is anticipated to be $1,052,831, with a final expense to be $961,691. And again, that represents tipping fees and processing of waste at the transfer station.
Thank you.
And that would conclude the budget.
I just want to say that I think has already been said, this is a work in progress. As has already been said, just because something is in the budget, we're not going to spend it. I certainly applaud staff, all staff, all departments, for coming in with a very, very fiscally responsible budget. Notwithstanding, I would urge you to continue to look for savings where they can be found. Obviously, wherever we can reduce the cost of government and provide quality services in this community, that is a good thing, and I would urge staff from the village manager's office down through every department to continue to do that. The one thing that I do have to emphasize is I think this particular budget presentation is an example that government can reduce budgets and a government can come in with a balanced budget. I hope there are other governments around at the national and state level which might take the hint and do what they can. But I think we can be proud, and I am proud of what our staff has done in terms of submission of this budget. And I look forward to hearing input from any members of the community that have further suggestions as to savings that we could incur, or other suggestions that it could have how we can improve upon this budget, because it is a work in progress. And we are always open to suggestions and ideas that anyone has as to how we can improve upon service to the people of Buffalo Grove in a fiscally responsible way. So I applaud everybody for what they've done, and I welcome anybody on the board or anybody in the community to share further ideas and thoughts as we move forward with this particular process. Anything further, Mr. Bragg?
I can't think of anything else to tell you about the budget. But I would like to echo what you said, President Hartstein. I really do want to thank our staff. We have been through some really turbulent discussions in the last few weeks, and I know it's for the better cause of the village. And certainly Scott and Katie and their work in finance, they were all out to put it together. I think we have the best budget we could probably hope for, given the economic circumstances that we're in. So with that, we're finished, and if you have any questions of us, we'd be happy to.
Are there any further questions? Trustee Trolling.
There's one thing that I'd like to make mention, which is probably the most important thing during this entire evening. Staff has spent a great deal of time on individual line items, and that's where the proof in the pudding occurs. Adding up those individual line items, those small little things where you say $50, $100, $200, and before you know it, it starts adding up to millions of dollars. And the most important thing to recognize here is that this budget is $2.87 million less than the 2010 budget, which is a 4.6% increase. I mean, decrease, excuse me, decrease. So it's important that everybody recognize, the public, our taxpayers recognize that this budget is, again, $2.87 million less. We're operating at less cost than we would have in 2010, and I appreciate everyone's efforts. I think everybody else does here.
And it would even be better if, for those things of which we have no control, like the pensions and things like that, which we have as a village have no control over. So call your legislators and help us in that regard. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? This meeting stands adjourned.
A sound data security plan is built on 5 key principles. Take stock. Know what personal information you have in your files and on your computers. Scale down. Keep only what you need for your business. Lock it. Protect the information that you keep. Pitch it. Properly dispose of files or data you don't need anymore. And plan ahead. Create a plan to respond to security incidents. Let's walk through those 5 principles so you can see how your company's practices measure up and where you might want to make some changes. Ready?